Jen, are you ready? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Albany City Council meeting for June 15th, 2026. Vice Mayor Hanson Romero will please read the land acknowledgement.
The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez is absent. Councilmember Mickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hanson Romero.
Here.
And Mayor McQuaid.
Here. And before we start this evening, I have an announcement. I'm absolutely thrilled to announce to everyone that the Albany High School boys team won the Ultimate Frisbee National Championship over the weekend. They were undefeated the entire season and won an epic overtime game. And I just want to send our congratulations and our best wishes to all of the team. And hopefully they will be with us in July to be recognized in person.
They also came from behind.
Yes, a lot behind.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, we had no closed session. That brings us to ceremonial matters. Councilmember Mickey, will you please read the Juneteenth proclamation?
City of Albany Proclamation in recognition of Juneteenth, June 19th, 2026. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, setting in motion the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans and the end of slavery throughout the Confederated South. And whereas the Civil War ended with the surrender of General Robert E. Lee on April 9th, 1865. But news of emancipation did not reach Texas until June 19, 1865, when then Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, announced that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. And whereas numerous local and national Juneteenth organizations have arisen alongside longstanding organizations with a common mission of promoting and cultivating knowledge and appreciation of African American history and culture, while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all people and cultures. And whereas events in our nation have highlighted the racism and inequities that continue to be faced by Black Americans and people of color. And whereas we renew our commitment to eliminate these injustices and work towards a nation and community where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, as envisioned by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas Juneteenth provides an opportunity to celebrate the achievements, culture, leadership, enduring contributions of African Americans to our nation, state, and local communities. And whereas Juneteenth serves as both a celebration of freedom and a reminder of continuing work to ensure that the ideas of liberty, justice, and equal opportunity are realized for all people. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council encourages all residents to recognize and learn about the significance of Juneteenth in African American history and in the heritage of our nation and community. And be it further proclaimed that the Albany City Council hereby recognizes June 19th, 2026 as Juneteenth in the City of Albany and encourages all community members to learn about, celebrate, reflect upon the significance of Juneteenth and its enduring meaning in our nation's history. Signed, Mayor Peggy McQuaid.
Thank you. That brings us to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to appreciate our staff for receiving a Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant. On May 29th, staff received notification that the city has been conditionally awarded by Caltrans a Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant in collaboration with El Cerrito to study alternatives for completing a bicycle connection across Cerrito Creek between Adams Street and Albany and Carlson Boulevard in El Cerrito. The planning effort is expected to go underway in 2027, and we will engage with public and relevant stakeholders to develop and evaluate alignment options for connecting the bicycle facilities on either side of Cerrito Creek. Brighton Avenue Sewer Rehabilitation Project is expected to start construction as early as mid-June, with anticipated completion by midwinter. This consists of removing a 6 to 8 foot sewer main and replacing with 12-foot sewer main along Brighton Avenue and connecting streets. Please bear patience as we work through that project and the importance of replacing our sewer laterals. A recap of our safety expo that we had just this past weekend on June 6th. Community members came out to learn more about disaster preparedness and how to get involved with block captain participation and our CERT program. Appreciation to both our public safety departments and our recreation department for facilitating that event. Summer camps are well underway with the Recreation and Community Services Department. Last week, we served more than 130 youth in our variety of camps, from Pokemon to arts to sports. Something for everyone, and there are still some spaces left, so please look into those programs if they are of need. A reminder that 4th of July is just around the corner, and we will have an event at Memorial Park, 11 to 3 o'clock. Very family-centered this year, a type of carnival atmosphere. Really appreciate our staff for always being inventive with this fun event. So, and a reminder that it's our 250 years of independence. So really a great time to celebrate with our local community. The fire department is leading block captain workshops as they shared in the Safety Expo, and these will be held on this week and next week at the Community Center from 6 to 8 p.m., June 16th, tomorrow, or June 23rd. Please join us to learn more about community safety and building a stronger, safer, and more connected community through these neighborhood block captain programs. And believe it or not, school will start in August. So for those of that ilk, please sign up for our after-school program. It just opened today, and those spaces fill quickly. So it is the Friendship Club after-school program, and you can sign up online or in person at our Recreation and Community Services Department. And an early announcement that National Night Out 2026 will be coming on August 4th. Registration is now open to host a block party. albanyca.gov/NNO 2026 to register. Those spots fill very quickly, so please jump on that. And Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park improvements have started. We're thrilled to be able to provide some improvements to the park, more to come. But for this round, it will include more accessibility, landscaping, and shade. And that is provided by Proposition 68 grant funding. And finally, a reminder, while not necessarily today, but on hot weather days, please remember to water young trees. Visit our website, Urban Forestry page for information on how and when to water and tree care tips for those young trees. That completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any council comments, questions? Any from the public?
Nope.
Okay. Excuse me. That brings us to go to the city public comment. A time for persons desiring to address the city council on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note city policy limits each speaker to up to 3 minutes. The mayor may reduce the time limit per speaker depending on the number of speakers. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items may be referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. Comments related to items appearing on the agenda are taken up at the time the city council deliberates each action item. The mayor will announce when the period for public comment is open on each agenda item. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none in the room, is there any online?
No.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to consent. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the city council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Anyone wanting to remove anything? 15, please. 15, okay. Any online?
No.
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Jordan.
Yes, City Clerk, if you could open the plan attachment to this agenda item at 7:15 and put it up on the screen. And my thanks to staff for putting this together and having such an expanded repair project compared to the prior phases. Like it covers more than half the city. So it's perhaps the less damaged part. I know you'll get to the more damaged part in the next phase. It's that last one. And if you go to PDF page 18, maybe zoom in slightly if you would. Yeah, so what caught my eye is that you can see around the base of the power pole there, it's been, presumably after the pole was replaced, repaved with asphalt cold patch, and that joint is also promoting the growth of various plants and things in the crack there. I've observed this in a lot of locations around the city where a pole is replaced and instead of repaving with concrete, they're repaving with cold patch. So I'm wondering if that, at least in this location, since there's going to be a concrete contractor right there, could be corrected and brought back to the original surface type.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm happy to speak to this. I'm Allison Carrillo, CIP Program Manager, City of Albany. So 2 things about this. One is I understand there's some kind of considerations on this might be asphalt. It is concrete, that patch. We have confirmed. I did highly scientific measurements or evaluation, but you can see the trowel marks in the concrete. It was a sidewalk concrete flag. There are places around the city that have asphalt around them. We don't have a list of them, and so the suggestion on those is that if residents, city council members, whoever can submit them on as a work order for us, we can then pursue it with PG&E through their work order program. They're much more responsive to us when we can give them a specific location versus a broad kind of general comment. And so that would be very helpful for us, and it makes it very streamlined. Regarding this patch, there's 2 things going on here on this particular property. One is that we suspect some of the damage is caused by a private sewer lateral. And so we are working with the property owner to try to identify the condition of the lateral, whether this was repaired previously and this is just needs to get repaired on the surface, or if this is something where there's continuing to be damage underground. And we are also working with PG&E as part of our normal procedures to figure out if the PG&E concrete restoration there that's also failing, but slightly differently than the rest, is a related issue or not. And part of the reason to cut that out is that we have to be cognizant of what we're asking our sidewalk contractor to do without getting into PG&E's business and vice versa. And so we're trying to balance that. And ideally, if we can get this done at one go, where we have PG&E come out ahead of the sidewalk work, we would want to do this as one full sidewalk repair in order to minimize impacts to the public. But until then, we don't want to be disturbing a PG&E pole without understanding what the issues are underground.
That's great. Thank you very much, CIP program manager, and to staff for going out and confirming that it is not what it looks like to my eye, although there still is the issue of the cold joint that's allowing weeds and whatnot to grow. So thank you for your attention to that. And I'll start logging those places I see actual cold patch and submitting them for a work order. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. With that, can we get a motion to approve consent?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
May we have roll call?
Excuse me, Councilmember Mickey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson Romero,
Yes.
Mayor McQuay,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez is absent, and the motion carries.
Thank you. And that brings us to item number 9, public hearing. Public hearing to amend the City of Albany master fee schedule. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Council. My name is Cassie Murphy. I am your finance manager here at the City of Albany. I will go ahead and summarize the changes made to the master fee schedule ahead of turning the item over to you to begin the public hearing. Just some background on the document. It is a single document that defines various fees charged by city departments. The fees are set at a rate intended to either recover some or all of the costs of providing city services. Each year, several fees are increased by the Consumer Price Index, that's the CPI, Bay Area for all items. This year's change was 2.18% from calendar year 2025 to 2026. The Finance Department applies that CPI update to certain fees, then coordinates with the other city departments for inputs on changes outside of that increase. Attachment 1 of this item showed all of the proposed changes. They were all highlighted in green if there was a change from last year to this year. And a summary of changes made outside of just the general CPI inflator was noted in the staff report and do include starting community development. And I want to thank Councilmember Jordan for pointing out that we had missed this on the initial iteration of the staff report and the schedule. In February, Council directed staff to evaluate the cost of waiving permit fees for installing electric vehicle chargers, solar photovoltaic panels that are not mandatory, and on-site electricity storage via batteries. So with that notification, language has been added to the corresponding sections to waive these fees. And in addition, included in the staff report, staff estimates that these permit types brought in about $70,000 in revenue in the last year. Also in the community development section, the SB 330 pre-application base rate was slightly updated above CPI to better recoup the cost of staff time. In the admin section, the city attorney's rate was updated to be per contract instead of the rate on the schedule. Also, language for a return check fee was updated to reflect current baked charges for return payments. In the fire department section, just as was started in fiscal year 26, the ambulance user fee was updated to align with the rate provided by County of Alameda Board of Supervisors. In addition to that, a schedule of late fee charges was added to the fire prevention safety program fees. Under the police department, which is actually under the admin section, but they manage the program, the tobacco retailer license fee was increased to align with the rate charged by other agencies in the area. In the public works section, the section outlining costs of the using Public Works vehicles and equipment was removed. The department does not rent out equipment, so didn't see it necessary to keep on the fee or on the schedule going forward. And finally, Rec and Community Services. Administrative changes were made to wording of the fees on the schedule, and that was outlined in the staff report. The Ocean View building was added as a reservable facility rental. The block party fee was increased to $22 following findings from a fee study. And finally, a section of Exhibit A was added related to priority registration based on sport seasons for local teams. So with that summary of the staff report, I will turn this over to council.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Finance Manager, for the report and for the work. On the multi-residence waiver of permitting fees for adding EV chargers in multi-residence, which section would that be in? Because I know there's the simple MEP.
There was
portion.
that one, and then there's a second one, and I can't remember the name of that section. If you could pull up the staff report, I believe it's on page, well, it's 2 and 4 of their section, so I believe it's the 2nd and 3rd of the community development section, clerk. If you could pull that up.
The master fee schedule?
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, it's the MEP fee, and there's one other section with it that has it noted for residential as well as for like commercial spaces, and it was added to that section. So, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well,
If you go to section 3, I think, is that community development? Yeah. I can't. Can you scooch it? Yeah, thank you. There, can you go down a page? There's one. Yeah, so there's one section right there.
I see.
And the other is the MEP section, which I feel like we actually skipped over, right? Is that earlier or later? Can you scroll down, Ann? I just want to see if we missed it or not. I think it was in an earlier section.
So there's that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right there. Thank you.
But would that apply to installation of EV chargers in multi-residence, or does that fall under a different section?
I believe it's this section that it's the multi-resident, even though it says simple.
Okay, well, that's what
yeah.
I was wondering, because you might have 10 chargers being installed, so I didn't know if this schedule would apply to that situation.
Yeah, I think because it's saying if it's for EV chargers specifically, even if it's like a multi, which we can remove the word simple if that makes it clearer. Yeah.
Okay, well, that can be under advisement. No, whatever staff thinks works in that regard. It just wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
Because actually, the waiver for EV chargers then, this was in the prior schedule. I misunderstood. And I misunderstood that perhaps because I did a tour of an EV charger installation, multi-residence, and they said they paid the permitting fees. They've been charged permitting fees. So I presume multi-residence we hadn't waived multi-residence, and I felt that was a failing on my part. So if this section actually does, sorry, I'm not talking to the microphone. If this section did apply to multi-residence, then I might go back to that company at least and say, you might want to check back with the city on that, because there might be some confusion around that. So anyway, thank you very much.
Any questions? Good.
Yeah, just a follow-up to the excluding the costs for solar. In our discussions, we'd also talked about solar water heaters, because sometimes those are used in conjunction with solar panels, where you can actually cool your solar panels by also doing solar water heating. So I didn't sound like that one got conveyed by Preston. I will also note that I missed all of those items. So I just, if I remember correctly from our conversation, we had also included solar water heaters.
My understanding is this covers solar water heaters as well.
It does cover that. If you look at any associated panel upgrades, it'll let us have more capability to do that.
Thank you.
I guess I read that as electrical panel upgrades. in that section, since it was a clause that applies to replacement of gas-fueled appliances with electrical appliances, but are you saying that would also apply to solar PV panels?
I think it's the any associated panel upgrades is the section that is kind of the catch-all for that.
I guess, so that would catch a hybrid solar PV thermal system or solar thermal panels alone? I would think that would come under a different permitting
Yes,
section.
that was the intent. That
Okay.
we would do it rather than itemizing each individual thing, because, in reality, we don't really know what kind of upgrades we're going to get, or if technology changes along the way before we're doing another master fee schedule. So we did it in more of a broad sense to do any associated panel upgrades. So we could do kind of overall, unless you wanted us to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm concerned that could be read the way I read it by somebody in the future as applying only to, referring to electrical panel upgrades as opposed to solar thermal panel installation.
Could you take
We
a associate?
we could certainly add that in, maybe in parens as a kind of solar, including solar thermal upgrades, just to make it more specific so people understand that it does apply to them.
Great. Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Mickey.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I do have a couple. On the tobacco license fee, I'm really pleased that you've raised it. Could we raise it any higher?
So we discussed that with the police chief. They raised it basically to align with what's going on in the area. I don't know if there's justification to raise it beyond that, because again, the intention is to recover some or all of the costs, so.
Okay. And then my other question, and I'm sorry, I didn't write down exactly where it was, but it references the Christmas tree pumpkin lot.
That is on general license, I believe, which is a bit of a confusing section for that one because it's a general permit. It's not actually the business license. So that's really intended because it's more for like the fire inspection and initial permit for storing Christmas trees and I believe, straw, which is why pumpkin was included in that as well. So they would get this permit and have the inspection alongside a business license. And the business license fee isn't on here, but there is a business license fee associated with that as well. So they would apply for this permit, have their fire inspection done, hold the permit, and then also apply for a business license. So in answer to that question, if a different business type would to be there, this one's, it's like seasonal decorations, I think is the name of this business category on the business license schedule. It would be something like peddlers or solicitors, which they can do a quarterly or a daily permit or a daily business license. So they wouldn't need to apply for the same permit, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. That wasn't exactly my question.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That taught me a lot. I'm just wondering if it's too specific in its language, like what if somebody wanted to do something else that still required the permit? It seems to me it's the fire hazard, not the Christmas tree or the pumpkin.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if the language should be something different, but I would
Yeah.
certainly defer to you.
We could discuss that with the fire department. I guess that was there because that lot, the activities in that lot, those were the ones that were considered to be hazardous, which created the need for the permit. So we can definitely look and see if maybe we just make that more generic, like.
Or it could be a different lot. It seems real specific to that location.
Yeah, right.
And I'm wondering if somebody wanted to do it somewhere else, and it seems very specific to me, and I think maybe it
Yeah.
should be broader. And then my other question about that exact location, if there's an art show, is that a permit, or is that part of the other land leaser, his permit? Or?
I'm not sure if they would need a permit, but again, it's worth looking into with the fire department because it's to mitigate risk of having an activity there that's not normally there. So in that case, if they were to require that, it would be a good idea, as you're noting, to make it more general. I think typically they would apply for a business license, and that would be mostly the activity they would do.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And just a word on that. Typically, that that those activities are done by Abrams Claghorn
Right.
Gallery. The owner basically gives him permission through the use of his business to hold those activities there.
Right. But sometimes we get real specific and then we realize, oh, wait, this doesn't quite fit all the boxes here. So, but thank you, that answered my question. Any questions online? And before you answer that, let me open the public hearing. Now I'll ask you, are there any commenters online?
No.
Okay, let me close the public hearing. Any final council comments? Then could we get a motion to adopt Resolution 26-44?
I will move the resolution with the addition of waiving fees for solar thermal panel installation. And would you like me, Mayor, to also include making the sort of temporary use permit more generic?
Yep.
Okay, and that is also included. I think that was it.
I think so. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. May we have roll call?
Mayor McQuay?
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan?
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez is absent. Councilmember Mickey?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Hanson Romero.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us 9-2. Public hearing on amending the fiscal year 25-26 and fiscal year 26-27 operating budgets and adopting the fiscal year 26-27 sugar sweetened beverage tax spending plan. May we have a staff report, please?
You may absolutely have a staff report. I am going to take 2 seconds to log in case I need to look something up. Although you've just seen my wizard who is headed back to her wizard seat where she can assist from a distance. So we should be all set. All right. Not every department head gets a wizard as an assistant. I gotta say, I feel very lucky. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Raina Schwartz, your Finance Director, and I'm here this evening for the first of several items. This one on the FY 25-26 and 26-27 budgets. Next slide, please. So, as you know, the city operates on a 2-year budget cycle. The current budget for FY 25-26 and 26-27 was adopted in June of 2025. This year, I'm bringing forward for your consideration both adjustments to the current year's budget and to the upcoming budget. Both of those are adjustments to the budgets that were adopted in June of 2025. Overall, while it looks like there are a lot of adjustments, there's really a lot of rebalancing that's in there and not as much overall change as it looks like, but really a rebalancing so that we are doing what we need to in order to maintain a balanced budget. As I fondly used as my little reminder cue for everyone during the budget season last year, everybody likes to be a zero. So the idea was to bring forward a bunch more zero budgets for the council's consideration. So that's really what's before you this evening. Next slide, please. So for 25-26, there are a number of changes. First, on the revenue side, which I have in front of me, which you will have shortly, maybe. There we go. The increases on the revenue side are primarily due to tax and fee revenues performing better than anticipated, which is great. Property taxes did better than anticipated. We actually saw from the assessor when we were coming into 25-26 a pretty robust estimate of what the assessed valuation would be for this year. It has come in fact, even a little bit stronger based on both turnover of property and investments in properties that have raised assessed values. Unfortunately, we're unlikely to see the same kind of growth in FY27, so there's a much more modest adjustment in the FY27 budget. Recreation and community service rentals, I'll just say, are going gangbusters. Courts, events, et cetera, everything is working really well in that regard. So it's really fun. I was talking to someone who I know from Contra Costa County when I worked there, and I was saying Albany's just got all these great programs, like these great camps and these great. I mean, it was fun to be able to talk about that. But that's the reflection right there that you see of the successful programs, is really that our revenues are doing well. I hate to turn everything into numbers. It's heartwarming, and I love the money. So I'll just say both of those things. On the sales tax side, we can just gloss right over that decrease. It's consistent. We tend to fare a little bit worse than other communities in Alameda County just because we have a relatively small base. So we just keep sort of moving those numbers down to a pretty flat level for over the last couple of years, and hopefully it'll start to pick up again beyond FY27. On the expenditure side, labor costs are just much higher than we anticipated. Didn't factor in all of the increases appropriately. One of the improvements we're looking to make for FY28 and 29 is improved budgeting software, and so that will help both with making sure that we're capturing those costs and we know where we're headed going forward. It will also, because it's built on a database and it's not a series of linked spreadsheets, which are prone to human error, which then gets reflected in documents sometimes. Double counting of things, tables not adding up in two places. All of our information will be coming from a single source. It will not be translated through a series of spreadsheets. So I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to that. But labor costs will follow that. Decreases are primarily savings in services and supply. We budget every year not only for our insurance premiums, but also for anticipated self-insured retention payments, which are really like our deductibles, right, for our insurance. So our overall cost this year will come in a couple $100,000 less than we budgeted, which is also helpful in balancing the budget. On the non-general fund side, next slide, please. Pension property tax fund did better than we anticipated. Oh, did I skip over revenues? No, I did. Okay, here we are. Pension property tax, same thing as the other property taxes. You'll see that across all of them performed above budget, which was helpful. Also recommending an additional transfer from the pension property tax override fund to the EMS fund to keep that fund balanced. It will cover the appropriate pension costs associated with that EMS function. And because we have the revenue to cover it, that transfer works well for not only on the general fund side, but on the EMS side. And then EMS revenues also increase. That's primarily the transfer plus about $100,000 in ambulance fees that above budget anticipated. So that's really the picture for FY25-26 and allows us with those changes to help ensure that departments can meet their budget. Departments here are very diligent in doing so, and having misaligned budget that then makes departments look like they overspent when it is not their fault is not helpful. And so that's part of the reason for some of that rebalancing that you see in 2025-26, as well as what you'll see in 26-27. Turning our attention forward, The 26-27 budget was adopted with an anticipated potential deficit of about 1.1 million, a little over 1.1 million, which is why you see the recommendation of a small adjustment on the expenditure side and a much bigger adjustment on the revenue side, because we're not just balancing back to a zero, we're actually balancing what would have been a deficit of 1.1 million to a balanced budget. On the revenue side, property taxes, the increase in the budget number is less a factor of anticipated robust growth, but more just a factor of the base came up in 25-26, so the level of growth we anticipated is about the same, but it's running on a higher base, so the revenue is higher. Rec rentals, again, this is relative to the budget that was adopted. Those revenues, we believe, will come in a little bit higher. The special revenue is really the big area on the revenue side, where there are two proposed changes in order to balance the budget, which are primarily one-time in nature. So these are ones, as we're looking forward to perhaps some of our other items on the agenda tonight when we're talking about revenue measures, the increased transfer from pension property tax override and a recommended use of the pension reserve. Those are one-time in nature. Great for helping us with a soft landing between now and the time that we are looking at growing our revenues, but required in order to make the budget balance without having to take even further reductions across the board or programmatically. The pension property tax override of $500,000, that is above the amount that is anticipated to come in. That fund has a fairly high fund balance, which came about because that revenue source fared better a couple years in a row, and we didn't update the expenditure side, so every time the revenue did better, we just banked that into a fund balance. So now we have the opportunity to use that to assist us. The pension reserve is the $775,000 that council set aside in 2023. It was set aside, although it's a small amount, it was set aside in order to help the city balance potential large increases in UAL payments or other pension-related costs. The pension UAL is going up about $385,000 from last year to 27, or from this year to 27, and so that is recommended as a balancer in the budget. Again, we're decreasing sales tax revenue estimates because it just continues not to perform. On the labor side, again, adjusting to account for the actual experience that we have from our labor costs. The UAL, the $112,000 is the difference between what was in the adopted budget for 27 and the proposed budget now for 27. The $385 is the actual increase from 26 to 27. I apologize, it's kind of two different ways of calculating an increase, but even when we anticipated from CalPERS what the UAL would be in 27, it has gone up more than that when they sent us the number last summer. In order to balance the budget, we then looked at, well, there was about a $960,000 gap when we were all said and done. That is about 3% of the departmental general fund budget. And we asked departments to plan to achieve those savings this year. And so departments, you had a great group of department heads. They were like, give us the number, we're on it. So that is the other piece of balancing the budget. So I wouldn't say that FY27 is a very pretty budget, but it is a balanced budget and really highlights the need for both continued work on the expenditure side to make sure we are being as efficient as possible, understanding our costs, really looking for all those nooks and crannies where we could potentially reduce costs, but also looking at that revenue side, which is, as the council has been very diligent this spring in looking at those measures. So that's the answer for how we get to a sustained balanced budget going forward, and not just every year we're reconfiguring the puzzle pieces a little bit. Moving on to the next slide. So the budget, oh, did I skip a slide on mine? Look, yes, no, you're good. It's me. Yeah, it's me. Similar changes in pension property tax override and EMS revenues and expenditures, adjusting those for actual property tax and revenue performance, as well as the increase in the transfer from the pension property tax override, which gives us the $500,000 net above the revised budget. Now we can go on to the SSB slide. The budget, as you know, includes $226,000 in revenue from the city's sugar sweetened beverage tax. That SSB revenue source has been pretty flat the last several years. We expect it to be right around 226-ish in the coming year. Although, as the report shows, there were some requests for additional funding above what's shown in this recommended table in order to keep with the theme of balancing the budget and not creating additional pressure. The recommendation before you essentially keeps the same programs in place at similar funding levels. The crossing guard program goes up by the amount that our contractor has said their costs will go up, and so our costs will go up. Otherwise, those costs are held pretty stable. 227, close enough to 226. I didn't force the shaving of another $1,700 off of there. But really the goal here was to acknowledge and reflect those program areas where we have had success and support for those programs, but keep it to the revenue source that is available for those and not creating an additional pressure point elsewhere in the budget. With that, just in summary, the budgets are balanced. Everybody can at least hold on to a zero for a moment for both 25-26 and 26-27. I will say about 25-26, which you've heard me say before. We're still in estimate land. We are not in audit land. So stay tuned. Never know what the audit's going to find, but we keep scrunching down what they have the ability to find. Both years rely on some one-time resources, which means that we have continued work to do to keep those balanced over time. And that the council is considering those revenue measures, and they're a key piece in helping us address the whole fiscal picture for the city so that it remains in a stable and sustainable place going forward. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from council? Go ahead.
I'll just, as an aside, in Alameda CTC meeting, the chair said, yeah, I'm just starting to look to you first. I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
I always look that way.
I resemble that remark. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report, Finance Director, and for all of staff for finding a way to balance the next fiscal year's budget. Does the 3% each of the department heads found or agreed to reduce their expenditures by, is that reflected in the attachment B already that we
Yes.
had? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. On the EMS revenue increase for this fiscal year, it wasn't clear to me, and you probably said it and I missed it, was that all of that due to reimbursements for services rendered, or was some of it from that and some of it from the EMS property tax, or how did that revenue break down? Where did it come from?
There were two components to the EMS fund revenue increases. One is about $100,000 in additional ambulance fee revenue, so that's fee source. And then the second was the additional transfer from the pension property tax override fund. There is no, we expect the actual parcel tax for Measure K to come in about what we thought the parcel tax was going to come in. And so there's no change in that budget.
Yeah, I would have been surprised because you know how much land there is. We're not making more land, so thank you. And then on the city clerk department, sub-department, I'm not sure the categorization there. There's a $190,000 increase proposed on a approved, this is for this fiscal year, on an approved expenditure of under $600,000. Is that because of the election?
That's
invoice
all
that came
election
in?
costs.
Yeah, okay.
All of it.
Yep, okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm working on that, by the way, still working on it.
Any questions? Okay, then I will open the public hearing. Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none in the room, are there any online? We have one raised hand, I see.
Hi, Ken McCroskey. I want to thank staff and the council for working to balance the budget. Much appreciated. Having said that, the sugar sweetened beverage tax is one of our rare opportunities to give kind of direct input from a commission, and the Transportation Commission asked that you fund both the crossing guards and the Ride the Bike program in our schools. With a lowered allocation to the Learn to Ride program at $15,000, I believe that offers a reduced opportunity for all of the elementary schools to participate. I understand money is tight. Perhaps another potential revenue source would be adding an education component to an upcoming granting opportunity for a physical project. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Are there any other online?
No.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to council for discussion. Go ahead, Councilmember Jordan.
On the SSB tax component, the spending plan, thank you staff for bringing forward a balanced proposal in that regard. I'm not particularly comfortable with continuing spending for Move and Groove. I know we reduced it previously and we signaled that we would be reducing it. It's a one-day event. I understand it's a fun event, but I think the value of education, particularly for swimming, given the risk of not knowing how to swim, probably has a higher benefit, but I'd be interested in hearing other council members' thoughts on that.
Councilmember Mickey, you
Yes,
thank you. Something?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff first for just the overall budget. I mean, we are about inflation in all of our lives, and we're asking our departments to take a 3% cut. It's already, it's a big ask, and this is not the first time we've asked our departments to keep constantly on top of every penny they spend. So I truly appreciate that. As always, I appreciate the fact that we take a realistic approach to what we think our expenditures and our income is going to be. So I think that definitely brings some. Oh, I've used all my time. Brings some confidence to my mind that when we say we're going to have a balanced budget, that we're going to be able to come either very close above or below that. So I truly appreciate that. And then we get to sugar, sweetened beverage tax. And, I think I know why we pay for our crossing guards through this, and I would agree that it is an important thing for us as a community to continue to fund, but it is continuing to dominate our expenditures in terms of how we fund that. So I continue to look forward to discussions about how we might be able to fund that differently. But with that being said, I do have a major concern that I share with Councilmember Preston Jordan about the swim program in particular. If the ask was $20K, I think that is a program where getting youth, particularly when they're young, in the pool and learning how to swim is a lifelong skill that is really a safety concern. I appreciate concerns about the bike program and how that would reduce the ability for all elementary schools to be able to participate. But I do feel like swimming is definitely one that needs to happen when children are young. I think I have asked in the past that we expand it to older youth who perhaps have not had an opportunity to learn how to swim, but I think there is a major importance to make sure that we continue to fund that program. How we fund that is, I think, a different conversation, but I am concerned about the reduction in the swimming allocation.
Thank you. May I ask a question? Was the swimming last year 15,000?
Yes, the
So we're not
swimming recommendation is to fund it at the same level as it
Thank
is
you.
funded this year, not at an expanded level.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor, do you have any comments?
I mean, I think that last year, I'm trying to remember, but the last time that we talked about the Move and Groove, we talked about, seeing if they would convert over more to looking for funding sources like, donations or sponsors elsewhere. Do you recall that? Yeah, somewhat, yeah. So, I mean, I'm fine with the way it is. I'm fine with giving more to the, swimming. I'm kind of open to how others feel, so.
Yeah, on the swimming, I'll note the district's letter, which pointed out that in years past, and the years that the program started up with SSB funding, it was being funded at the $20,000 level, and that was years ago. Money's becoming worth less, and we cut the amount of funding to it. So maybe an intermediate proposal is to shift $1,000 from Move and Groove over to Albany Swims to sort of continue on the track that we already set for Move and Groove, which is that you need to move towards, it needs to move towards self-sustaining or sustaining without support of the city. I saw Councilmember Mickey nod positively to that concept.
No. I have been one of the biggest advocates for helping support the start of many of these community events, but knowing that over time they do need to transition off to, as they get a track record of having successfully run programs. I've heard, I do not know, but I've heard that it is easier than to get donations, whether that be from local businesses or nonprofits, to continue to run such elements. It's much harder when you're in your first year or your second year. And so I'm not necessarily against a shift towards reallocating the funds from Move and Groove, but I recognize that tonight we are primarily talking about the sugar sweetened beverage tax, but I think in the past we had talked about, are there ways of, it's not on our agenda, can't do it tonight, but just like find some ways of patching some of the funding for the swim program or the bicycle program through the general fund or through the discretionary fund that we have. And I recognize we've had a conversation about how the council discretionary fund is used, but just recognizing that these are programs that have a long history in Albany that can only be funded by the city. And that, we can hope to go after grants and receive grants, but they are programs that are long-running in the city of Albany. And I would, I think they are programs that we as a community should continue to fund, knowing that these are instrumental life skills for our youth. I
have to say, I disagree. The only funding can come from the city. in the past, the school district provided swim lessons K-5 plus high school. Every student in the district received swim lessons as part of their day. So I know it's been a very long time since they did that, but there are options. Having said that, this is a great program. Obviously, I think everybody needs to swim. So I'm not opposed to moving some money around, but I think it just needs to be said that in the past they have provided lessons.
Yeah. I guess,
Was there for this?
Yes, I was one of them, with my flowered swim cap and all.
I remember you.
Mayor McQuaid, I appreciate that insight, and I recognize in the past, the school district has had the capacity and budget to program in many more things than they do today. I also recognize that while we are looking at our budget and trying to find ways of squeezing our budget and increasing our revenues, the school district it's not the same. They don't have as many options in terms of increasing their funding. They also have the looming possibility that they will be losing quite a bit of tax revenue should Golden Gate Fields end up becoming a non-taxable property. So I agree, there are opportunities in the future to continue to work with the school district to cover school crossing guards and these life skill programs, but just recognizing this year and what we can do this year, my concern would be just to make sure that we can properly fund those two programs. So with that, I would say that I would be open to not allocating necessarily money this year for Move and Groove and reallocating that towards the swim program. My preference would be that we could help figure out how to close that gap, but we only have so much sugar sweetened beverage taxes that we can actually reallocate.
So is that a motion? Although I'm not sure we're there because there's a whole bunch of pieces to that resolution.
Yes.
Just trying to move us along. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that there are other options for Move and Groove. We can look at those another time. And I don't necessarily mean city options, just options. My only thought is if we move the 2,500 to Albany Swims, can we squeeze out another 2,500 to get it back to the 20,000? And it looks like no, and no is an okay answer. Okay, I'm saying no.
As the staff report indicates, I'm sorry to jump in here, but it's highly advised that we keep to the numbers proposed.
Okay. Are we all sort of there?
Yeah, I'm just, before making a motion, I'll offer that kindly with the city attorney, I've been asked to keep apprised of the lawsuit by the sugar sweetened beverage tax industry against the city of Santa Cruz, which passed a measure to implement a tax. My understanding is the hearing occurred a month and a half ago, so a decision is expected to be forthcoming sometime this summer. And the reason I mention this is because, unfortunately, our measure did not include an inflation adjuster, and so it's stuck at 1 penny per ounce, which means both the incentive not to consume those products is diminishing over time due to inflation, as well as the purchasing power of the revenue. So hopefully, at some point in the future, I'm hoping 2028, depending on how the court decides, we could correct that deficiency. But until then, for today, I will move Resolution 2026-45 with the amendment to fund the Albany Swims program at $17,500 and not provide funding to Move and Groove this year.
Can I clarify? There are two resolutions, one for 25-26 and one for 26-27. The SSB is incorporated as part of the budget for FY27. So just want to make sure that you place your emphasis on
Sure.
SSB in the correct resolution.
guess in the attachments, I'm being blind here, which is often a problem. I only see one resolution
Right.
listed in the attachments.
Yeah, I'm confused too, because we've got,
Oh, it's exhibits A and B. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I changed
okay,
my
no
mind.
problem.
It's one resolution, it's two exhibits.
Okay.
right.
But you're talking about FY '27 for SSB programming. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
We all get there together.
And I was like, what?
See, she handled some confusion I had, so we're all good.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Before we vote, because this does have 1, 2, 3 different sections to it, are we all set with the budget for 25, 26, and 26, 27? We're all in agreement with that? Okay, perfect. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez is absent. Councilmember Mickey.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson Romero.
Yes.
And Mayor McQuaid.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Great, thank you all. Okay, and that brings us to item 10, 10-1, potential revision to rate for business license tax and technical changes to sections 5.1 and 5-2 of Chapter 5 of the Albany Municipal Code relating to the business license tax. May we have a staff report, please?
Absolutely. I will introduce this item while the clerk brings our panelist who is participating remotely, Eric Myers from HDL. He will make the presentation. I will introduce the item by saying the attachment here, the PowerPoint that you have, includes the information that you got on May 18th with the first set of models, which he will cover briefly, and then talk about the models that were developed after the May 18th hearing and go into some additional detail about those. So just a little bit of structure about the flow of the presentation. And with that, I'm hoping that Eric is...
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Good evening. As mentioned, we wanted to start out tonight just with a little bit of background and context. We did go ahead and present the new information and models that came out of the directions from the last meeting, the May 18th. We made some adjustments to the tax study. We're going to focus on the new information, but before I get there, what I'd like to do this evening is start just with a little bit of context that I think will be useful as we go through the new information. So the first is that because we're talking about a gross receipts tax, there can be questions about how that gross receipts tax may impact different types of businesses. And that is a fair question. I welcome it, but I wanted to point out a couple of things. Number one, there's a limit under state law, as we understand it, that says, look, only the state can tax net income in the state of California. So that really sets up a framing around business license taxes in California, that they just can't go to taxing directly the net margin of a business. So we have to look for other proxies for measuring the taxable activity. Really, the three main choices are a flat tax, which doesn't really measure any of the taxable activity, an employee or unit, some other unit tax, which often only measures part of the taxable activity, or a gross receipts type tax that measures by proxy the value of the taxable activity. So just wanted to set that up as sort of the context for why we might be looking at gross receipts. I know that there has been interest in some of the questions around profitability, but we just don't have the ability to build a tax on that direct basis for a business license tax in any event. The second item, and this will take us to slide 9, which is not a new slide. We didn't make any changes here. So if there we go. I'll just go if we can go to slide 9, which will be a list of jurisdictions. One more, please. There we go. Perfect. I wanted to point something out. It doesn't really show up in the document here, but I thought this was as good a place as any to point out to council that a number of jurisdictions near you are also actively considering modernization and update to their business license code. So the city of Hayward, for example, has just recently, I think, proceeded forward with their own measure. City of San Leandro is still considering whether to update their measure, their business license tax. City of Emeryville is actively considering that as well as the city of Newark. So I think it's useful to note that a number of your peer jurisdictions are also reviewing whether to modernize, what those impacts would be, what are the trade-offs. Excuse me. All right, if we could go ahead to the new models. Excuse me, apologize. That would be slide 26. Perfect. So we'll refer to model 4 or model 4.1. Same model here. This is the new model based on what I understood the council direction to be in that May 18th meeting. So the models were, one, to have a projected increase of about 500,000 in revenue. 2, to have $200 for the first 200,000 in gross receipts, and 3, they should still simplify. And in fact, Model 4 does all 3 of those things. It has only 3 categories, making it easier to navigate. Actually, and if we sort of keep the residential rental at status quo, that makes it even easier. We did create 2 variations that we'll talk about this evening. Model 4.1 that brings residential rental in under the gross receipts, and Model 4.1 RR, it's creatively named, right? Residential rental, that keeps the residential rental status quo. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I think that would have been the previous slide. If we can go to slide 27. There we go. No, slide 27. Perfect, thank you. So this is the basic structure that we, following the directions that we came up with for models 4.1 and 4.1 RR. Retail businesses, well, again, let me start in the logical place. So for businesses up to the first 200,000 in gross receipts, there would be a $200 flat rate. Please keep in mind that right now, if you trigger the one employee requirement, which would be most every business except potentially residential rentals with only one unit, you'd be at 382, give or take. So this is about not quite half of the existing minimum, if you will, under the existing structure. From there, if you're over 200,000, then you're going to look at these categories. If you fall in retail, then Model 1 and Model 4.1 and Model 4.1 RR, both $1 per thousand. The general businesses, which would be everybody else who isn't retail and who isn't a residential rental, would be at $4.45 per thousand under both variations of the model. So the only real difference between 4.1 and 4.1 RR is that in Model 4.1, the residential rentals get charged based on gross receipts. In Model 4.1 RR, instead, they keep their current structure, which is a per unit structure. Next slide, please. Okay. So what are the revenue impacts from this? We'll get to some of the other impacts in a bit here, but just looking strictly at revenue. Well, the first thing we wanted to do was try to have about 500,000 in revenue. We see that Model 4.1 doesn't quite get there, but is pretty darn close. So Model 4.1 is about 447,000 in additional revenue from business license tax. Model 4.1 RR does get there and has the added benefit of leaving residential rental under its current structure. You can also see the average current charges to the right. Three most, average current charges are just in the column just to the right of Model 4.1 RR. And then you have the averages for each model, giving you at least some sense of the impact and increase to these different categories on the average in any event of what the average taxpayer in that category would pay both before, now on the average current charges, and after. Okay. Next slides, please. Okay, so now we're going to take just a few minutes to go through a bit of a model comparison. So here, the next slide, slide 30. So we've added Model 4.1, 4.1 RR in the top table. Nothing too surprising there. We've already covered that, but you can see that both of these models have more revenue built into them than the models that we had brought forward before. The median tax amount is also pretty equal on Model 4.1 and 4.1 with standard Model 3 and less than the estimated current charges. And we're actually going to talk about that in just a second here. So next slide, please. So the standard Model 3, which was the variable gross receipts we presented last time, would have resulted in about 67% of businesses that we estimated would pay less than the 382, so to speak, minimum. If we go to the next slide, slide 32, we can see the impact of Model 4.1, which is actually an increase in the number of businesses that would pay less tax. That has a lot to do with the 200,000 threshold, as well as some of the rate for $1 per thousand and for the smaller businesses. So at that point, we see an increase from 60s to the 80% in terms of the impact on small businesses that would be paying less than the 382, which is the first employee charge. Next slide, please. Is the same thing hold true for Model 4.1 RR? Pretty close. It does, again, because we hold out the residential rentals, those stay as they are now, but we still see an increase over Model 3. So again, Model 4.1 has a larger impact on decreasing the taxes for small businesses. Next slide, please. So what is the new models, 4.1 and 4.1RR? Where do they put us compared to some of the deep dive cities that we discussed last time I was with you? Well, they put us about the same place. They are a little bit higher. That's not surprising based on the revenue that they would produce. They are not higher for the lower businesses per se, but they do put us in the same realm of Richmond and Berkeley. That's about the realm of where we would be with the jurisdictions if you looked at peer comparison jurisdictions just across this basket of hypothetical businesses. You can see here at 110,000, the bottom row, or 107 for our model RR. That really puts you right around Richmond's number on this slide. And if you go to the next slide, please. Again, Berkeley for the same basket of businesses would be about 143,000, with the city being under Model 4.1 RR, about 107,000. So the real impact there is, dare I say, that it's stay at about the same rankings as we would see, but Model 4.1 does get you a little bit more revenue, and it keeps you right in that area of Berkeley and Richmond in the comparison jurisdiction. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pause and hand it back, and I'll be available for questions as they may come up.
Are there council questions? We'll start over here this time. Councilmember Mickey? Over here.
No questions. No. Right, put it on your calendar.
Vice Mayor, any questions?
I just, looking back at, some of the comments that we've had from some businesses, there's certain ones that are very concerned with things jumping exponentially high, and I'm just curious if have we taken any sort of specific dives into any of these, just to, because some are stating that they're concerned that they would, not be able to do business in the city. So I want to hear from you guys about that.
Rena, would you like me to respond to that, or?
Well, yes, I would. Thank you.
Sure. I guess there's a couple of things I would note. First, I commend the businesses that have communicated. It's great to have them raise their concerns. They're an incredibly important part of the city and its vitality. Secondly, if we look at these rates, and I'm just going to say this by way of comparison, I'm not trying to in any way undermine those specific claims. But if we look, for example, at a $100 retail purchase, let's take a look at that. If you'll imagine that you just bought something for $100 from a retailer. Now, their margin might be really low, and there's a couple of things we want to look at here. Number one, retailers where we think there is higher cost of goods and lower margin. Model 4.1 as well as Model 3, but Model 4.1 really emphasizes this. That model discounts the gross receipts rate everyone else is paying close to $5 per thousand. A retailer is paying $1 per thousand. That's a 75% discount on the tax itself to try to recognize the impact for some of these lower margin businesses. Number two, these taxes at the margin are very small. What do I mean by that? If you had a $100 retail purchase, the customer who made that purchase is going to pay $10.75 in Albany in sales tax. Okay? Most of that's going to go to the state and some districts, but nonetheless, the customer is going to pay $10.75 on that $100 purchase. If you were to pass through the business license on that purchase at $1 per thousand, that's 10 cents on that purchase. So when we say that there can be increased taxes, that is completely true, based both on the rate, but it scales automatically with the amount of gross receipts. We're not talking about imposing an arbitrary tax on small businesses. In fact, this model at $200 for the first 200,000 creates kind of a safe harbor for these smaller micro enterprises, those that are building up their book of business, and it scales depending on the amount of business. But because these rates are small at the margin, while they're not negligible to some of the low margin businesses, I think if you look at the difference between what the customer pays in sales tax and what we're asking the businesses to pay in business license, that difference kind of shows you how small the tax is on any given transaction.
Thank you for that. Here's one that I think is kind of maybe an outlier is, the coin exchange business that we had right in. She's taking in a lot of, gross receipts from that, but then, turning it around. How would it affect a business like that?
Yeah, so a business like that, I mean, at least in our model, a business like that would be classified as retail, which means they're already getting sort of a consideration for being a low margin, high cost of goods sold, and contributing to the tax base by collecting and remitting the sales tax that the customers pay. So that's number one. And then number two, that's really, that business is similarly situated to any other business that has high cost of goods sold. And that's kind of why at the beginning I talked a little bit about the fact that we don't have the ability to go in and tax strictly on the basis of net income. It's just not on the table. And so what we have to do is choose between the better options. And for example, if you stayed with the per employee tax, what you're then doing is saying that a small restaurant that also has high cost of goods sold, but has lots of employees, should bear the tax more fully than someone who may be able to run their small business that has high cost of goods sold, but doesn't need as many employees. What we're saying is, no, let's level that playing field, look at the gross receipts, and then try to adjust the rate to do some equity and some, well, it's not really equity, fairness in recognition of the fact that they do have some high costs of goods sold. I guess the other thing I would say, and again, I do not mean this to be flippant at all, is that we have to be very careful not to push that logic, which is definitely a matter of concern for that business, and we want to take it seriously. But pushed to its extreme, it begins to break down the very basis of the tax, because now if we're saying, well, I'm only going to tax you if you run a profitable business, now we've gotten into some very murky waters, right? And so we need to have an objective structure in place. We don't have access to net income. That's not allowed to us. We believe that gross receipts is the best of the trade-offs available to us.
Okay, and, I noticed that some places drop in certain arenas and some go higher. And so I guess I'm just, so in that scenario, I understand. My other question was, say this passes, is there a caveat or something that we find some sort of unintended consequence happens to a particular business? Do we have any sort of pullback or adjustments that can be made to something like that?
Generally speaking, if you've got a voter-approved ballot measure, typically, and I would defer to your city attorney on this, but typically the council can get together and choose to enforce at a lower rate. The voters sort of set the maximum rate. But again, let me try to be even more specific. So let's imagine a business that makes $1 million in gross receipts. If they fall into that retail category, we're talking about $1,000 in taxes that they owe over the year, less than $100 a month that they need to pay and clear, and that automatically scales with how much business activity they're actually doing. And so then the question would become, what would actually trigger that impact? But yes, there's some flexibility to take a look at it and say we could charge less. I guess the question would become, well, why, and what are other similarly situated businesses doing? And there's some other considerations there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask potentially a clarifying question. If the measure provided the council such latitude, it would not be latitude to lower it for a particular business, right? It would be latitude to lower the rate in that category that was established by the measure for all businesses. Okay.
Correct.
Thanks for confirming.
Sure.
So that raises a question in my mind that if we wanted that latitude, would we be better served having multiple categories, even if the rate is the same? So in other words, the legal question is, if our categories are just retail and general business and then residential rental, if we wanted to pick a subcategory of general business, would that have to be identified already in the measure that's passed by the voters, or would that be, would we have the ability to say like services? Because like some of the other ones we have are services or professional services. Am I making any sense? So like,
I don't think we could do it later if that is your question.
okay, so, but if we were to pass a measure that still listed under Model 3, the variety of categories, and it just happened to be that the maximum we're asking for is the same in multiple of those categories, we could then later choose to lower what we were billing for a listed category in the measure?
I think that's correct. I would want to check with some of our attorneys that specialize in this. I think there should be probably a rational basis for why you're lowering it for this one category as opposed to other categories.
Okay. So I'll save it for discussion, but.
I thought we were in questions.
We are still in questions.
So I do have another question. Was there a model, and maybe I'm like not thinking of this clearly, but what, like, if it were to stay at like the per person basis kind of thing that we were doing, but just raising that each category of the per person, I mean, where does that fall?
That
There was such a model. Sorry, go ahead, Raina.
There was, it's either Model
1, I believe.
1, I believe, which basically just takes exactly what we have today and increases it to increase revenue. It basically to get another 500,000. It's a very significant. I mean, It's more than 40%. I don't know why I had 40% in my mind, but it's about a 50% increase.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I think that, yeah. Thank you for that reminder.
Are there any other questions? Okay, any public comment, questions? Any online? Okay, so back for more discussion.
So I want to thank staff and the consultant for doing what we asked, even if the numbers that came back to me are a little bit painful. I mean, we asked you to do two things. One was simplify, and you absolutely did that, and so I appreciate that. The other is that we asked you to try and hit 500,000. And I think there's, where my pain point is coming is a little bit in the ask of both. And so we've simplified, which I think is more approachable. We've definitely made a situation where small businesses aren't necessarily, they're kind of starting up, or they're not yet that profit, they're not making that much gross revenue. They have more runway. Our local restaurants, based on this example, like we are significantly making it easier for those local restaurants, and they are a tight margin kind of industry. But then I flip to the other side and I look at the flooring contractor, and we end up with either Model 4s with double what they would be paying in any of our neighboring communities, at least more than double than what they're paying in our neighboring communities. And over the years, I've met many families in Albany who are contractors of some kind or another. And that's a pretty significant jump to go from, on $1.5 million in gross revenue, of going from $700 to almost $6,000 in taxes. I appreciate that the grocery store number has come down, and it's closer in numbers to what they would pay in neighboring jurisdictions. So I guess where I land is I appreciate everything the consultants and staff has done, because they've delivered what we've asked. But in the process, I think we have created a situation where I think some of these services now are, as opposed to, I'm not sure if that would have been professional service or services, like the flooring contractor, but we're really making that, we're putting a lot more burden on that business while we've relieved the burden in other businesses. And so that is what makes me nervous about simply having it be retail and general business, is that we don't have the leeway to look at those numbers more fine-tuned. And so there was a question about basis, why would we choose to decrease? I would say for services, are we pricing ourselves out of having local contractors, essentially, those who provide those kind of building services? And I get it that this is the kind of thing that no matter what we do, there's going to be some people who are paying more or paying less. Right? If we just go with the existing model and we try and increase our revenues, everyone's paying 45 or 46% more, which is not great, but we also recognize we as a community need more revenue from somewhere. So I'm just raising that as something that I'm noting here, is that I think we're going to be helping our restaurants, I think small startup businesses. I do worry more about the dentist, about the contractors in our community. So I'll just raise that.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about, like I said, I used to help run a construction company, and we might have a contract for $600,000, and you're walking away with profit margin of way less. I mean, because you've paid for prevailing wage, you've paid for bond, you've paid for insurance, you've paid for the actual cost of the materials that are used in the job. You're paying for the permit fees, you're paying for there's so many things involved. When you get right down to it, you maybe made $20,000 on that job. And then I also don't know how it translates in my business, for example, as a real estate agent. Can you speak to those points more?
I can. and perhaps it would be helpful under the different models. So under model 4.1, generally speaking, so for a real estate business, the definition of gross receipts usually is restricted to the dollars that are paid to you for commission, let's say, right? So a real estate agent, because they only ever receive the other dollars in trust for someone else, that's usually an area where gross receipts doesn't include the full value of the home. That, however, is not a cost of the business. It's because you're holding those in trust. Similarly, if an attorney, for example, gets settlement monies, those monies don't really belong to the attorney. She's going to have to pass most of those on. So the part that the attorney is holding in trust, she is that's not gross receipts to her business. Whereas if you take in a gross amount and you pay out for expenses, all businesses have expenses. All businesses have costs of both inputs and labor and production functions, and those are not excluded. We just can't exclude those under the definition of a gross receipts. And so what we're dealing with is, instead of trying to exclude those from the start, what we try to do is have a marginally low rate, right? Again, to go back to that $100 example, we can use a $1 million example if you'd like. If that contract is worth $1 million, right? We're talking about an extra $1,000 in cost on $1 million contract. Well, not exactly. It'd be about 5,000 on under Model 4, right? And so it would become a cost to the business, but at that low of a marginal rate, while it could have some impact on profitability, it's highly unlikely that it consumes all of the profit margin. And also, some of these assumptions around profit margin assume that the price will stay fixed, and so all of the tax will come out of profit. I don't think that's the case for most businesses over time.
Sorry, Eric, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. What you are saying is that you would assume that businesses would incorporate this tax into what they charge?
If it is marginally noticeable to them, okay, because their profit margin is so low, yeah, one of their options would be to change some of their prices, okay, to absorb some or all of the cost.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me?
Historically, if I just may add, historically that has not been the case. But again, we all know that we're in difficult times in California, and so I don't want to discount that or minimize it, but historically that's just not been the case because at the margin, these rates are so small. My apologies. I think I interrupted one of you.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right. Thank you. So in the case of contractors, all contractors would be competing in the same environment. So they could pass on some of that. It's not like some contractors that are doing work in Albany would not be faced with that, and some would. It's an even playing field. As far as the flooring contractor example, the Model 401 example is that 1.5 million is entirely service, no product. The flooring contractor is presumably installing something that is being purchased. Now, maybe the presumption is that the client is purchasing the flooring directly from a flooring vendor, and the flooring contractor is only installing it. If that's the case, I wonder if there's any flooring contractor that installs does $1.5 million a year of service in Albany, Because again, for contractors and for the other businesses, it is the gross receipts of their work in Albany, not their entire gross receipts. So a contractor who's based in Albany, any work they do outside of Albany would not be subject to this, as I understand it. And in terms of service, my goal has been on people who spend money at our retail establishments are paying 0.5%, 0.5% as it is now. And households that have the money to spend on services are not paying anything like that. And so it was to bring those to equality.
So typically when I'm using a flooring contractor, it's the materials and the service combined. So like, for example, Floor Dimensions.
Right.
I buy the flooring through them and they come and install it. So it's one bill.
Right. So their tax would be a mix of the retail. So they'd report their gross receipts on the retail side, and that would be under the 0.1%. And they'd report their gross receipts under the service side, and that would be the 0.445%. So not all, if I understand correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but not all of the businesses as a whole wouldn't be in one category or the other. They could report their gross receipts in those two different categories. I mean, if they're half of what they do is retail flooring, would they then report half their gross receipts as in the retail category?
Generally speaking, yes. If you've got two lines of business by the same entity, they would be broken into, you'd split up the gross receipts in that way, yes.
So I don't know I can't speak to what percentage of a contractor's gross receipts typically are products, retail products that they buy to actually use in construction, and what percent is the service that they're providing. You probably could do that more than I could by far, but that might give you some slight more comfort.
Yeah, no, that helps. That helps.
So, President, I understand your statement that you don't know how many flooring contractors are 1.5 million
in service.
Service, right?
Service in Albany.
But regardless, it is twice as much, almost twice as much as Sausalito charges. It is more than double than what Richmond charges. It is more than double than what Berkeley charges. So I'm just as a frame of reference, like whether they make 1 million or they make $500,000, it's still double. The ask that we're asking is double what they would pay in neighboring.
Well, there is a crossover point, because if it's only $200 on the first $200,000, then at some smaller gross receipts per year, we would actually, this tax under 4.1 would be the same or lower than adjacent cities. So it goes to what volume does a contractor actually do in Albany? Yeah. So I think these other cities it's just a flat percent from the first dollar onward. Mm-hmm. So I think without doing that comparison, you can't really tell where we are at relative to other cities. I mean, $1.5 million of flooring installation service in a year, I don't know. That would probably be a lot for Albany for one contractor. That's my guess, just from.
Well, we have Albany floors down. We've got several flooring contractors in Albany, so some are quite large.
But how
But
much?
again,
how
they
much
would
do
pay-
do in Albany.
What's that?
So they would pay for all the retail sales they would pay, right? But then they would only pay on the service side, only for services that were installed in Albany?
Right.
Is that correct? Okay. Okay.
So do they do $1.5 million of service within the city of Albany, as opposed to the greater East Bay area? So there's a lot of these, as you say, flooring vendors and installation providers, but they're covering a much larger geographic area than just Albany.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look to staff, but I'm hoping there's a reason why 1.5 million was picked, and that it was.
Eric, was there a reason 1.5 million was picked?
It's really an artifact of what we were trying to show under Model 3.
Okay.
So it just carried over as we were doing the comparisons.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily pulled from some, okay. It's not based on any known numbers?
No, it's not intended at all to be a picture of what, of what a flooring contractor here would be.
I'll point out that would be $300,000 per employee per year of gross receipts, which seems kind of high for a flooring contractor business. I mean, maybe that would make more sense for a medical office or something like that on a per employee basis.
I think that is a fair statement, although I will say that you'd be surprised in the state of California, the per employee productivity is in the six figures for contractors typically.
I don't doubt that, but I would think maybe more like 200,000 to 150,000.
I think that would be if we were shooting for a more realistic example. I wouldn't disagree with you, Councilmember Jordan. I would point out that the purpose, if you will, of this comparison is to allow you to do what all of you have been doing, which is to sort of say, assume this hypothetical is true. What would the tax be and why? And does that get us where we're going from a policy and revenue perspective?
I'm going to put something else in here with thanks to staff for running a slight tweak on 4.1 RR at my interest, I think just today. So I was a little uncomfortable with $200 for businesses that are really just starting out from home. And through engaging with staff, I learned that there's about 700 businesses that have a revenue of less than $50,000 a year, which was pretty amazing to me. So I asked, well, what if we made it $50 for the first 50,000 and then $150 for the next 150,000? So it stayed $200,000 for $200,000 in gross receipts. And they said, well, that there's so many of these small businesses that would reduce the revenue. And so I asked, well, if we really went to where I want to go, which is to make the tax on gross receipts from non-retail businesses 0.5%, so it's equal to our sales tax, the response was then the revenue would basically stay the same. So if we lowered the tax on the first $50,000 to $50, to really help out those businesses and keep them at a low rate, because I had no idea there were so many businesses that had such small receipts, and then went to 0.5%, which is the same as their sales tax. So I think that's easy to communicate to people as well why we're doing this. I think that would really help with business formation in the city.
So 0.5% up to 200,000?
No, so it'd be 0.5% beyond 200,000. So the model 4.1 is 0.445%. And so under, let's say 4.2, if you will, 4.2 RR, the rate would be 0.5% over $200,000 gross receipts for general businesses. It would stay 0.1% over $200,000 for retail, as it is in the models. And it would be $50 on the first $50,000 of gross receipts for all businesses, and then $150 for the next $150,000 of gross receipts for all businesses. So that would really help out small businesses in Albany compared to what they pay now. Did I represent that correctly? I think so, based on my email, if I got it right.
Yes, I believe so. And thanks to Eric and his folks to helping us run all that in the background today, little hamsters on
Yeah,
wheels
it was amazing.
running everywhere.
I didn't expect to get an answer so fast, so I'm really impressed. Thank you.
We aim to please.
Well, you hit the mark.
I understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Jordan, but I'm just wondering, from like a staff perspective, is processing one of these business permits for $50, is that a effective or efficient use of our staff? versus saying for the first 100,000, it's 100. Like there was a break point at which that check that we're receiving makes sense for us to even worry about processing in one sense. And so to me, I can understand why you want something maybe smaller than 200,000, but I just want to understand, like, is even at $200, is that just barely really making sense for staff? Or is it at $100? Because my worry is at $50. It's actually, by what you described, a large number of checks that would be $50 that they'd be processing.
Well, is it checks or it's an online platform?
Sorry.
FYI, it's all HDL, so it's handy. It's covered under our business license administration. And, I mean, I say that somewhat facetiously, but more so, there is an online payment portal, so there really isn't hardly any check transactions. But I appreciate the question because it's like, it does cost to process checks.
Yeah.
But it's covered under our agreement with HDL. And two, that is handled through an online portal. And so we don't get business license checks, but even on other things that we take payment for, we get fewer and fewer checks, which is great. The more we can push to online payment mechanisms, it's much more efficient for us.
But isn't there still sort of a cost of doing business if you're getting a lot of little online payments? Does it make?
Please don't ask HDL that question. Perhaps we could have that conversation elsewhere. I think the friction is pretty low in terms of an online portal. I do think that that's the case.
I mean, that's one of the reasons for digital technology is
Right.
build a thing once, and
Right.
basically the more transactions you have, the cheaper it is per transaction.
Okay, so we got a lot more to get through, so let's try to figure out where we are.
I can make a motion.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I want to go back a half a step before we start tweaking. Do we have a model in mind here? I mean, I know you talked about 4.2, which is fine, but of models 1 through 4.1 RR, is there one that we like that we want to tweak?
For me, it's 4.1 RR.
Okay. I would agree with that. I like the idea that the residential staying the same. We've put a lot of energy, good energy into tenant protections and whatnot. Let's not raise the taxes on the housing providers to where it gets passed on to the tenants. Let's not go down that path. Would you agree with 4.1 RR?
I would say that I am in general in support of any of the fours.
And are you sort of okay?
I'm just, like I said, I'm just kind of nervous of these unintended consequences. But one of the reasons that I do ask, so many questions is because, our business community has been very nervous about this and wanting to make sure that we get as much information and that we're not unintentionally harming any of our businesses, because they're all very, we're lucky to have them here. We're not the big cities that surround us. We're very local business, independent businesses, and so we're not the big box retail stores in Emeryville. We're not the Costco in Richmond. So I mean, I'm very, very nervous about harming any of our independent businesses here. So.
Well, I think that we're all trying to get there. So now, can you go over what you said one more time?
Yeah, sure. So the two changes from 4.1 RR, one is to go to 0.5% on gross receipts over $200,000 for general businesses, and the other is to go to $50 for all the businesses on the first $50,000 of revenue. Revenue. Gross receipts, pardon me. And then it would be another $150 for the next $150,000 of gross receipts. So it would keep the $200 for $200,000 of gross receipts, but it would have that step in it, recognition that there are so many businesses that have gross receipts that are really a small fraction of the $200,000. And my interest is in really supporting people into forming businesses, because you can imagine if you're just thinking of setting up a small business, home-based business in Albany, and you got to pay $200 out of pocket just to get out the gate in this, and there's lots of other costs, that could dissuade you from even trying.
So what, maybe I'm missing something, what does that do for our flooring contractor friends?
So for them, it wouldn't make any difference.
Okay.
It would still be the same.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make
Yes,
sure I wasn't
sure.
missing a step. Okay,
Because they have because they have more than $200,000 of gross receipts, so there's no change.
Well, the change is going from $4.45 to $5.
Well, okay, yes, right. Yes.
So there is a change.
Yes, there is a change. Yes, you're right. I apologize. Although again, I think that example, for the reasons I deconstructed, is not realistic.
Just to make sure I understood what you were saying earlier, though, that 4.2 RR, I guess that's what we're calling it, that would bring in, what was the estimate staff had on how much it would bring in? Is it?
It was, they didn't give me a specific number, but they said basically it's the same as 4.1 RR.
I see. So it's in that 500,000.
Yeah. So
Okay.
The increase in rate on the groceries over $200,000 compensated for the decrease on businesses that make 50 or have 50,000 or less.
okay, so it's, instead of the 4.5, it's 4.45, it's 5.
It's 5, yes, right.
Okay,
I think better in percentages, so I apologize for that.
no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that, okay.
And again, the reason given that it came out as 0.445 or 445 per thousand, it was close enough to 5 per thousand, which is 0.5%, which my goal has always been to make it the same as our sales tax.
Okay, and you're exempting the residential.
Yeah, so that's why it's 4.2 RR.
Okay, is there any reason we shouldn't do this?
So if I can summarize to make sure I understand it and hopefully answer that question, up to 50,000 in gross receipts, $50. Between 50,000 and 200,000 in gross receipts, $200. Above 200,000 in gross receipts, $1 for retail. Well, 1 per thousand for retail, 5 per thousand for general business. Residential rental stays the same.
Yes.
There isn't any reason you shouldn't do that. From a process standpoint, I think it's clear, it's easy to administer, it's straightforward. It, in fact, will raise probably between 500,000 and 600,000. That bump up on the 4.45 to 5 does produce a little bit more revenue. So we do make up for that. And it does, as you saw in some of the slides that Eric covered, we go from about 68% of the businesses paying that 382 or less. We go probably with the change from 50 and not just the single 200,000 threshold. You're talking 80+% of the businesses in the city that are small are all going to be paying less than they are currently. Yes, it feels large to see some of those numbers, but $6,000 on a 1.5 million in gross receipts is still a very small percentage. And so I do think that it lines up well. Will there be quote unquote winners and losers in business categories? There will be. Anytime you change something, it shifts the balance a little bit in terms of who bears the greater burden. But overall, I think it puts together a comprehensive package that works and works from an administration standpoint as well.
Okay. So with that, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mayor, for tempering my enthusiasm. So I will move what we are calling, I was going to make a motion earlier.
Can I, before you make that motion, just, so I recognize we have chosen $1 and $1 per thousand, $5 per thousand, and we've got the other breakdowns. Do we want to afford future councils any ability to modify these rates in the future? Since we're essentially asking the public to give them the maximum. And why I ask this is, do we want to at least list the categories that are listed in Model 3, even though in reality in Model 3, it went in this Model 4.2 RR, it's all going to say maximum of 5 per thousand. But it would at least allow future councils, without having to go to the public, the option of lowering a rate if we realize that perhaps we are overly exuberant in simplifying.
Thank you for raising that again. I am amenable to that because, what really came to mind for me from wanting to raise the rate on the service side was, attorneys, accountants, it's kind of services that provide service to higher income households. And I do have some concern for service companies that say Clean City Hall, for instance, janitorial service companies. So, and I think there was some differentiation in the categories that were in the model you're referencing between the professional services versus services. I was a little worried about that making the message more complicated, but I think reality is, obviously, the city attorney will write the question how she writes the question, and the impartial analysis will be how it is. But I think by and large that will be kind of in the noise for the typical voter. It'll be easy enough to say retail's this and all other businesses besides the residential are this. So I am amenable to that suggestion. Thank you.
Actually, sorry, I thought about one other, when you're talking about the services, just like, say, for example, somebody who's creating websites. They're not technically bringing in a ton of money or, but I mean, I don't know where their gross receipts are, or, book publishing or any of these other service-related items, because the services is such a large generalized category,
I mean, we could either figure out every business in town and make them a line item, or we're going to have to lump it together. And I'd be inclined just to have these three, keeping it simple. I get nervous when we start talking about what this kind of service or that kind of service, or then there's this and then there's that, and where do you draw the line? So if we just have three, I think that's much easier.
Yeah, because I don't know where the examples you raised would land. Are they professional? Are they not professional? I mean, they feel kind of professional, but they're not licensed professionals, so would they not be professional?
Maybe they don't make the money of
They're not
doctor
janitorial,
baits.
they're
Other cities have defined these things.
Sorry,
Other cities have defined, there are generally businesses fall into pretty well-known categories, so tend to fall in. Again, the messaging to the public can be as simple as retail pays this, non-retail pays this. But in what's in the measure language, I appreciate giving future councils some flexibility. Because otherwise it's going to be a very blunt change. And chances that future councils, what do I say? I often say the likelihood of the future council necessarily needing this is probably not huge. But it is a need that they may want to afford themselves of.
Would it be possible for a future council to cross the board lower the tax? So it wasn't on one specific thing? It was like one small amount across the board? Would that be legal?
I think so. We could confirm it because I think, as just mentioned earlier, it's a maximum, right?
Right. So maybe that would,
Yeah, but it would be across the board as opposed to saying this is primarily intended for service providers that are non-professional services, right? If we just realize that we're really hurting the housekeepers that are running in Albany or other businesses. So again, I don't know what we'll need, but at least having the general categories that are listed in Model 3 provide us some more fine-tunability in the future. Sorry, I may not be on council when this happens. So future councils would have afford the ability. The only other question I have is on the 50,000 and 200,000. Are we going to build in some kind of CPI index increase? So, I don't know if we need to tie it specifically to CPI, but even saying that every 10 years it goes up 10,000, or no, 10 years it goes up $20,000, or in other words, it's like 2% increase is afforded, then whether or not we want to include something like that. Because again, trying to avoid a situation where we have to go back to the voters to ask them to reapprove things, versus just saying that our anticipation is that a $50,000 business today, in 10 years, that's really $60,000 or to that effect, that there's just a built-in escalator for the smaller end.
Thank you for catching that.
I was slightly surprised that you hadn't raised this already, but.
I mean, because I know you mentioned it when we were talking about the sugar sweetened beverage tax, is that wasn't put in, but, there also is the thought process of, maybe at that time, this should be re-examined and not just put to council to make that decision. Maybe it needs to go back to the voters at that point.
I was thinking this would be automatic, but yes, I understand your point that this kind of business tax might be something that.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes you don't want to just put the automatic play on things, right?
Yeah. So I'm not proposing an increase in the dollar or $5 per thousand. I'm simply saying for the kind of lower end, like where is that threshold for what is a small business? And at one point is 50,000. Everyone's making more than 50,000, so like it doesn't really help anyone.
It would make sense to index the threshold values similarly to indexing the actual business license tax. Actually, it's going to go up on its own.
Yeah,
Yeah, no. So, but it would make sense to index the threshold amounts, because you're right. In 5 years, 50,000 people are going to be like, well, I make
I sold lemonade.
90,000 and I'm still a super small business, right? So you've got some built into that. So
would you index it to the CPI?
I would, because it's simpler.
Okay,
And
that's
we're
fine.
going to index it to April CPI, so it's the same as almost everything else.
All right, okay. I like that.
All right.
Maybe now I'll try and make a motion.
Make a motion,
Yeah.
see where we get.
Okay, so I move, I'll put it all in here, 4.1 RR with the changes that the general sector tax rate on gross receipts would be $5 per $1,000 for that portion of the gross receipts. It's over $200,000. That an additional category for all businesses of $50 up to $50,000 of gross receipts be implemented, that the $50,000 and $200,000 thresholds are incremented by the increase in CPI each year, and that the number of business categories that were included in Model 3 is included, but that the rates for all but residential and retail would be at the $5 per $1,000 over $200,000 gross receipt rate. I think that got it all in there.
All right, a clarifying question. So if the thresholds are increasing, is the fee also increasing with CPI? So the $50 fee becomes, so the cap is 50,000 plus CPI. Does that mean that the fee is $50 plus CPI?
Yeah, it should also.
It should also,
Right.
I can speak to that if you don't mind.
yes.
So there's state law stating that any gross receipts based measure, because it's already indexed to inflation, right? The dollars being used to pay it are already inflated. You can't attach a CPI index to the rate of $5 per thousand or $1 per thousand, but you can for the thresholds, as
Well, I think
Rena already indicated.
I think the Councilmember Mickey was asking was the $50 and the $200, which are not rates, they're absolute amount.
Yes,
And
those can
those
be.
should index as well.
Could we get a second before we keep discussing?
I'll second.
Okay, now you can talk.
Oh, sorry, wait,
Well,
sorry,
yeah,
I missed
accept-
something.
Well, I accept the suggested amendment, which is to index the $250 and the $200 to CPI change as well as the thresholds.
Did you include additional categories? Sorry.
Yes, I included the
Sorry, I missed
categories
that.
in Model 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'll second.
And are the categories in Model 3 clear enough for you? I mean, it seems like there was a little confusion, what's service, what's,
Yeah, they're clear. They're
okay.
They're legally clear. I don't know if they're clear to me, but I haven't investigated them, so
Stop
I'm happy
talking.
to go with them.
Any last words? We're close. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Hanson Romero,
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez is absent, and Councilmember Mickey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. It's about 8:20. Would we like
Thank you, Eric.
a 10-minute break?
I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. And with that, we will take a 10-minute break. All right, we're all back and ready for more. 10-2, update to emergency medical services, advanced life support, and fire protection tax. May we have another staff report, please?
You may have another staff report, but it will not be from me. I am going to ask Amanda Welker from NBS to come up, and she will provide the update to the emergency medical services parcel tax update. Again, this is another item that you heard on May 18th, and so there are some changes that we've brought back that were consistent with our discussion that evening, and welcome, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amanda Welker from NBS. As Ms. Schwartz was mentioning, we were here on May 18th discussing this very item, and Council requested a few additional modeling considerations. So we have that for you this evening. And I'll have a few slides as well with a little bit of a recap on where we are in the process. We have an existing parcel tax with a $2 million revenue, and we are at the May 18th meeting. We presented some different revenue targets, and were asked to come back with some modeling at a $2.5 million revenue target, with some caveats there that we've restructured. We were asked to establish a per lot square foot rate for undeveloped property to capture revenue there for those vacant parcels. And overall, this modeling is to attempt to reduce or really eliminate that dependence on the Golden Gate Fields revenue should that property become non-taxable in the future. So our first option, this one is just kind of to give you an idea if we wanted to keep our existing methodology, which is currently a lot square foot methodology, and that is, again, no consideration of building square footage size at all, just our current methodology, and removing the Golden Gate Fields parcels, which have a very substantial lot square footage footprint in the city. That would increase the rate per lot to get us to that same revenue target of $2 million to 9.3 cents per lot square foot. Currently, we're at 7.5, I believe, to get to that target. So that would be about a 24% increase to all of the different land use types that you see in the table here. And this slide, did you change slides? Sorry. Oh, yes, that's right. We did. I forgot. We threw in a slide at the end there. We threw in a slide for you just to show you at that same lot square foot methodology how we would achieve that $2.5 million revenue target. And this table just shows you if the Golden Gate Fields parcel were not to become non-taxable and we kept this model, it would, without having to increase the lot square foot any further, you would get that $2.5 million, because if you can do the math there, it's about $500,000 for that Golden Gate Fields parcel at the lot square footage calculation with this new rate. And then in a comparison to our building square footage method, our option 2 here would be to change that calculation from lot square footage to building square footage, but also to maintain a lot square footage rate for vacant property. And as you'll see in the table here, that would come out to 20 cents per developed building square foot, and then 9 cents per vacant lot square foot. And that would get us to a $2 million revenue target. And then again, option 3, same concept here, but just with that additional increase in revenue target to 2.5 million, brings the rates up to 25.4 cents for developed building square footage and 11 cents for vacant lot square footage. I'll just caveat as well that in all of those numbers, I did not, there's no reduction for any potential exemption, so just keep that in mind. And this bar graph here just gives a visual representation of the average rates for those different land use classifications based on those different options. We've taken out the option 1.1 with the Golden Gate Fields. And you'll notice in the current average, I've taken Golden Gate Fields out as well, just because it skews the averages quite a bit. So you'll see that option 1, basically everybody has to go up a little bit to accommodate that loss of revenue from the Golden Gate Fields parcels. And then options 2 and 3, they go up in a little bit different proportionality. You'll see that the condominium and multifamily properties increase a bit more. And you'll see that single family goes down a bit on average, and your non-residential and vacant parcels increase proportionally. And then this table, you'll see just a comparison of those total revenues by land use classification over those different options. Just kind of a visual representation there of the amount of building and lot square footage that we have dispersed throughout the city, and then the potential revenue amounts by each of those options. And something we'd like to have the council give us direction on this evening is the low income exemption program. I know that there's been some different conversations about how that needs to be approached. We currently have the very low income thresholds being represented here in the presentation. We would like to confirm whether there's any additional consideration for the low income threshold at perhaps the 50%, which we have in another parcel tax. So direction on that would be helpful this evening. And next slide, please. And then we do have the 5-year revenue estimates based on the $2 million revenue target and the $2.5 million revenue target, just again for some perspective there. And then where we are tonight, we are asking that we have the confirmation on the desired model and methodology approach, as well as that direction on the exemption processing, so that we can prepare the ballot measure language and present that to council at the next meeting, so that that can be adopted and taken out to voters in November. And I think I just covered what I just said there in the slide, but want to reemphasize that I know we have several parcel tax measures that will be on the November ballot, and those resolutions must be submitted to the county by early August. So again, your direction is much appreciated, and I am happy to answer any questions. I tried to keep it a little high level since I know we've looked at a lot of numbers this evening, but if you'd like to dig into anything, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Are there council questions?
I'll keep them short. Thank you so much for sticking with us all
worries.
through the meeting and for doing the work. There was a statement in the staff report that the rate adjustment brings the rate to $0.093 dollars per square foot and includes eligible possessory interest parcels. So I guess I'm curious, is the tax rate on possessory interest parcels based on the land area, or is it based on the building square footage, or what is it actually based on?
I think the intent is that it would mirror the vacant or developed, they're developed because otherwise there's no revenue. So they're developed. So let me just start that sentence over.
Sure.
So because they're developed parcels, we would be looking at getting estimates of building square footage and treating it consistently with the other parcels. We will triple confirm with BBK as we're working on all of the language once we receive direction. But as long as it's something that's definable, it should be a valid approach for us to use in the measure.
Fantastic, because I'm so focused on closing that loophole. And I'm curious about the status of the investigation of a trigger clause for,
We do think we can put in a trigger clause.
Fantastic. Okay, those are my questions.
Councilmember Mickey, any questions? Are there any questions from the public? Any online? Okay, back to us for discussion. Who wants to go first? Would you like to go first this time?
I guess this is kind of a question, but so all the numbers we're seeing tonight do not include any, petitions for sorry, I'm going to go back and just exemptions. Thank you. Do we have a sense of how much that might impact these numbers? So, I mean, if I ask only in the sense like if the answer is yes, my big thing is if we're trying to stay at 2 million in revenue. And if we take the like how far off are we with the exemptions?
So we know what we have had in exemptions for Measure K historically, which I want to say was 80,000, 60,000.
I don't have
Less
that
than that.
information off the top
I'll
of my
have it.
head.
I'll look it up, or my wizard will potentially be looking it up. I love saying that. But beyond confirming what that actual number is, because we did have that number in the prior presentation on the 18th, they're all essentially built with the numbers that we know, which are based on just the very low income exemptions, and the we don't know what the impact would be of adding in a low-income exemption. The sidewalk tax is a sort of a poor proxy for understanding that because it's such a small amount that we don't know whether that really drew in many folks. It is the only one where we have anything related to just a low income, though.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess as a follow-up to that, my understanding from a prior staff report was that the portion of the originally proposed increase that was due to a funding gap that had emerged since Measure K was passed was about $300,000.
Approximately that 300,000 or a little bit more, and we know that labor costs continue to grow. So
if it was 2.5 million,
yes,
then we'd have some running room.
Vice Mayor, do you have any comments?
With the low income, were we also, is this covering seniors in any way? Like, are there?
So my perspective on that changed over the decades because St. Louis Fed has found that people over 65 moved into holding most of the wealth in the country as of about 15 years ago, and now they hold more than half the wealth of the country. It used to be 55 or 53 to 65 had most of the wealth, which made sense because then they spent it down in retirement. So I have advocated, and it has been adopted by the council measure after measure, not to have just a pure non-means tested exemption in there, because I mean, I know people that have seniors and they've got $5 million in their portfolio and they shouldn't get a free pass, and they're taking a free pass because they get a free pass from the school parcel taxes. So they're like, I'm not paying that, and I don't think that's cool.
So I'm talking about thinking not with the ones that have the 5 million. Would they be covered under the low income if they, I mean, people are living longer these days too. So it's not like they're, the $1 million that they might have today, is it going to last them the other 25 years when they reach 105 or, whatever. So I'm trying to keep that part in mind. Also, just with the condos, specifically related to some of the condo buildings, the HOA fees keep increasing exponentially, and there's been a lot of special assessments because of the older buildings and not having the reserves that are needed. I'm just trying to, it seems like such a jump on some of these condos, so I'm a little kind of, nervous about that. I just want putting this all out.
Yeah, so in that regard, I mean, I certainly support including a half exemption, half rebate for low-income households, which would help. The other thing that I think might help is looking at this in combination with the potential, with the restructuring, if it's triggered, of the property tax to continue supporting street paving and storm drain maintenance. Between those two, because if that goes purely per square foot, then the tax on condominiums is going to go down on average. So if you look at those as a package for both owners of individual houses and owners of condominiums, it would go up about $11 or $12 a month in total. But the total amount that a condominium owner would be paying would still be about half what the owner of a house is paying between those two parcel taxes. So I really think they work together. If you look at one or the other in isolation, then yeah, it doesn't look as good.
Well, and that's also one of the reasons that I kind of bring up that conversation again, for people who aren't here tonight, perhaps they're going to come and revisit this meeting. Sometimes I want to reiterate some of the things and how, kind of where we got here, what we've considered, stuff like that, so.
It's good practice. Thank you.
I did find the prior in the May 18th report, I think the estimate is that the current amount is about $80,000 for Measure K in the exemptions. So again, we don't know what would occur if it were opened up beyond that, but that's what we have.
And is $2 million the revenue for Measure K as it exists, or for Measure K taking into account that $80,000 of reduction?
It is, the current $2 million is, I believe, net of that.
And remind me what net means.
Meaning it takes into account, we're actually accruing that in revenue. We're getting it in money, as opposed to the foregone exemptions.
Okay, right, so that makes it even better. So then if it's 2.5 million, that 80,000 is kind of already accounted for.
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I don't know. Should I make a motion?
So,
Not quite.
Okay.
I thought so.
yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get to a messaging issue as we go to the public. I think a clean saying, hey, we're losing Golden Gate Fields, we're bringing in revenue from what were not taxable before, so the non-possessory properties, but we're keeping it at $2 million is like, to me, that's an easy, we can easily sell that and just say, look, this is replacing what we had, it's making sure that we're not losing money. When we suddenly jump to 2.5 million, we're now saying, well, easy for it to be painted as, oh, you guys got it wrong last time. I guess there are a lot of ways I guess to me it's a relatively easy sell to say we're simply making sure that your taxes just don't go up to meet our current obligations of $2 million, which we all agreed to in whatever year. I don't think it's an impossible sell to sell the public. Well, we actually realized that not only did we lose Golden Gate Fields, we're gaining this property tax here also, but we're actually EMS is down 300,000 or more. But that's just, it wasn't that long ago that we asked for this last tax. And so I think I just want us to recognize that is going to be, the 2.5 million, I think, is a harder sell to the community than simply going back to saying, we're trying to get us back to 2 million. And oh, by the way, we're also bringing in taxes that we weren't even getting before.
Yeah, I've thought about this, and I don't think would be that surprising to people that anything having to do with medicine,
Yeah.
medical services has gone up faster than inflation. So I would never say that we got it wrong. So we got it right for that moment. And yeah, we're 4 years later and it seems crazy, but that's what's happening with medical costs. So, and from my experience running the campaign for Measure K, people rightly love themselves some Albany Fire Department, and EMS and ALS, and so
How many tax measures do we have this year?
Yeah.
Well, in that respect, on the flip side of the coin, it was kind of like rather than going back and being like, oh, maybe asking for that bigger ask might be better. I don't know.
No.
yeah, because it passed by a wide margin last time. So opinions vary.
I think the 2.5 million ask versus what we saw last month was 2 million versus $3 million. I think 2.5 is much more. I think we have all the numbers to explain why we're asking for 2.5. So I'm not opposed to 2.5. Yeah. I'm just simply raising in the picture of thinking of the number of measures we are asking the Albany voters to vote on and the cumulative tax amount that we're asking. It's important that we.
Yeah, I think as Vice Mayor articulated, it's good practice to daylight that in the meetings or highlight that.
So are we ready for, we don't need a motion. I learned this the last time.
Yeah.
So we're happy with option 3, right?
Yeah, I
Is that
think
the way we're
option
looking at it?
3.
Option 3.
With the addition of a half exemption rebate for households that are between very low income and low income thresholds.
And the trigger.
And the trigger. Yeah, and the trigger.
So let's just clarify, because Amanda and I have had many conversations about the trigger, because I find myself challenged to triggers. As a matter of fact, a little PTSD about it, but I'm good. So with the trigger, we know what the ultimate formula is post Golden Gate Fields becoming untaxable. That is the option 3. It's very clear. So the question is, what happens upon the election? No change in methodology, no change in anybody's taxes for anything, but we go up in order to get 2.5 million.
I see what you're saying. So increase the rate. Yeah.
See, this is the tricky part of the trigger for Measure K in a way that is different from the other parcel taxes.
Right.
If we want to get to 2.5 million, we have to increase the rates.
Right.
So there is a change.
Right.
A 75-word ballot measure that says we're going to do this now and we're going to do this later. And so we probably need to do did we land where we probably need to do the methodology change now?
What if we do the trigger, then if we increase the rate on the lot square foot method to the 9.3 cents per lot square foot, if the Golden Gate Fields parcel stays in, that gets us to $2.5 million. When that parcel becomes non-taxable, that would be your trigger, and then the next fiscal year, the methodology would change to a per building square foot method for developed, and the lot square footage method would remain, but the rates would be different. So that would all need to be explained in the measure.
Wow.
75 words, I don't know.
I think we are making it easy for people to vote no.
Yeah.
You make it that complicated.
Yeah.
Well, and so what if, I think going back to what I think you were initially saying was we would we would still make this change, but at a different rate. But if Golden Gate Field, or once it becomes untaxable, then
And it would flip to the per building square foot.
Right.
So it's
I mean,
pretty
couldn't
complicated to
it still be a
explain.
building per square foot, but at a lower rate? And then if Golden Gate Fields becomes untaxable, then the rate changes to X amount?
Or we could just say, sorry, or we could just say, we're going with 0.254, 25 cents and change, regardless of whether or not Golden Gate Fields is taxable or not. And so if Golden Gate Fields happens to be taxable, we get $3 million. If it's not, I'm making up a number there, but if it's not, we get 2.5, which is what we need.
Just one piece of information, Golden Gate Fields is technically developed. There are buildings erected on their main property, so that parcel tax, or the tax amount for the developed building square footage would be significantly less than the lot square footage methodology.
That's okay.
Okay,
Mean,
just so
essentially,
that
we would get more than 2.5 million if Golden Gate stayed in private.
A bit more, yes, correct, yes.
Perhaps not 500,000, but we're getting more.
Correct.
I think that's an easier sell. To say, we're switching to this system. Our assumption, because everything is indicating that it will not be taxable, is that we will be getting at least 2.5 million in revenue.
Yeah, I appreciate this coming up. I don't know about that because, so the reason Measure K was per land square foot was specifically to maximize the amount that was being paid by commercial Golden Gate Fields. And so if you go to a building square foot right out the gate, then you'll be sort of double increasing the tax on residential because you'll be increasing it because you're reducing the tax on Golden Gate Fields, and then you'll be increasing it to get the 2.5 million. Because you'll be shifting the burden away from Golden Gate Fields before it goes untaxable. So to me, that's a risk.
It's a risk. I'm nervous how you sell this when you make something very complicated.
Yes, I mean, my preference, well, let me put this on the table, is to not make any change. Yes, we don't get our extra $500,000 or maybe $400,000 after, because we're not going to get the $500,000 because there's going to be the low-income households that come in, so maybe it's $400,000, $350,000. But we also just approved increasing the rate from 7.5 cents per square foot to about 8.1. So we've moved part way to the 9.3, I think it was. So I prefer keeping
the
a
ask
cleaner
of the lenders
message.
Is if Golden Gate Fields becomes non-taxable, this triggers. Otherwise, your tax rate stays the same.
Carry on. Yeah. Now, I know that doesn't raise new revenue. I understand that. But I think that's a simpler message, and we are raising new revenue through other things that we're doing. And there is going to be more revenue coming in from this because not that much, but there's going to be maybe 150,000 more coming in.
And should this pass, and for some reason Golden Gate Fields doesn't become a non-taxable entity, we have 2028 to put a measure in front of the voters to increase the rate.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I would assume by 2028, it would be
We're gonna
pretty
know.
well known if it's going to go public, non-taxable or not.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what would you do?
You come sit right here and tell us.
Right.
The answer would be whatever it is you want that ultimate piece to be, option 3, go with that. Yes, you do potentially likely shift the burden away from Golden Gate Fields for a year where they pay less tax, but not not just because they get to pay less tax, but because the methodology has changed, so they pay the appropriate amount for the methodology that they have. But you have a simple message about this is the methodology we believe is the best proxy for service demand, and this is where we're going, and this is the revenue we need. So from my perspective, that creates the simplest picture, which is do it now, do it in one shot, don't use a trigger because of the additional revenue requirement. For the street storm tax, it does make more sense because you just go status quo until. But it's a policy call on how that revenue gets balanced.
I like that. That seems very logical.
I mean, the downside of that is if one of them goes into effect and the other one doesn't. So restructuring of the street paving and storm drain tax is going to lower taxes on condominiums. If that one doesn't go into effect at the same time, then you're not offsetting the increase that this would incur on condominiums, for instance, as one for instance. So, there's these offsetting effects so that as a package, they make a more appealing package, I think, with which the cleaner message, which is this package when it's triggered or when it goes into effect is going to be about $11 per residence per month. If they go into effect out of sync, then you lose that. And I'm, as much as, well, I won't get into that. I'm not confident that Golden Gate Fields is going to go untaxable. I don't want to put probabilities on it, but I don't really want to burden residents with that increased tax rate if Golden Gate Fields isn't going to go untaxable. And it may be that the taxes at Golden Gate Fields are part of what's motivating what's happening now. And if we all of a sudden take away that incentive, I don't know. I mean, they have signed an agreement, I guess, so probably that doesn't matter.
I have to say, I really like, again, and this Councilmember Mickey was saying this too, is keeping it really simple, getting a very clear message. I mean, overall, what's our intention moving forward? And, remembering like this is also affecting Berkeley in their sense too, because Golden Gate Fields is Berkeley and Albany. I mean, and I'm not sure what Berkeley's doing as far as their portion of things are moving along with this, but I see that it is in a two-part. I don't know if there's anything to put on the ballot measure in a way that this is kind of like this measure kind of somewhat coincides with this measure. I don't know if there's language to do something like that, but I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a fairly simple message to say this new tax structure will be triggered if Golden Gate Fields goes untaxable. And to say we just raised the rate by 7.8%, which is going to be another $140,000 a year. So that without adding the low income, so that gets us about halfway to that $300,000 gap that exists. So my preference is to leave things the way they are and then just trigger to the new structure if Golden Gate Fields goes untaxable.
So you wouldn't put even a rate increase in at all?
Not against the current structure, I wouldn't put a rate increase in on the current basis, which is per square foot of land. So as I said, in the earlier agenda item, we already raised the rate on that tax by 7.8%. So in the next fiscal year, starting in a month, we'll be getting about we'll be getting about $2,150,000 from Measure K. Unchanged. Whether we did anything or not, we'd be getting more money. So we'd be closing part of that gap. already.
I think I can, having had individual conversations, not violating the Brown Act at all, but I can connect those dots now. One of the consent items was the annual report on the changes to the partial tax rates for all of our measures as they currently stand. There were a couple of years of administrative errors in the Measure K rate, so the council didn't apply, or we didn't apply the maximum rate we could have for Measure K, and so we will catch up more so that the true increase between what was charged on the property tax bill in 25-26 and what will be in 26-27 for Measure K looks like a 2-year increase because we're catching up to what we didn't charge. We got artificially held low. So that's what the council member is talking about when we're going to get 7.8%. You're thinking, where the heck did 7.8% come from? It's essentially 2 years of about 3.7-ish percent or 3.5%. So that will help, but our costs will continue to accrue at the same or greater rate.
Councilmember Mickey, do you have any other thoughts?
I'm just really torn here because, I mean, we could approach this. I mean, the Golden Gate Field question, right, could be put in front of the voters in 2028, right? Because by then, it will have been decided, and it will have impacted us. We could this year simply say we are trying to make up the $300,000 that we need. And that could be switching this, that could be just keeping the system we have now and just increase the rate and make up $300,000. And just punt on Golden Gate Fields. I mean, from a messaging, it's really simple, right? We are simply updating this to match the actual costs. Because as soon as we bring in, well, if Golden Gate Field sells, and it's like all kinds of questions. So it's like, I'm like, either we just jump and we just say we're doing it ahead of Golden Gate Field selling. And if Golden Gate Fields doesn't end up becoming non-taxable and ends up becoming something else, like, it's fine. Like we already like just a little bit more revenue, a little bit more. It's not $500,000, so it's a little bit more. I just feel like it's an easier sell to either to just say, let's just go for it. Let's go for option 3. Or I say we go with, let's just make up $300,000, assuming the Golden Gate Fields is around because, they're going to finally come up with the money, but my understanding is, there's going to be it's contingent on a bunch of things happening on the site that might take another year or so, which means their tax liability doesn't drop until maybe late 2027 or
Until the
middle
buildings get
2028.
demolished, right?
Yeah, right, and the site cleanup, right? Because what I've heard is it's supposed to be turned over to East Bay Parks or Trust for Public Lands as a clean site, and whatever that means, right? But that means it could be a 2028 vote that says, what do we do about the lost revenue specifically on this measure?
Well, the one thing that I hear a lot is, how are we making up the revenue? And I'm a little bit concerned if we say we punted, that's not a good look for us.
Yeah. But we are doing it on other taxes.
Right.
Right. So that it's just one piece of the equation.
The other thing is, well, there's a long runway here before stuff happens there. But I think, the budget was supposed to be done today. We should be hearing fairly soon if the $125 million got moved into is real. I don't want to just kick this down the road for another 2 weeks, but I'm almost wondering if in 2 weeks okay, never mind. Okay.
I mean, having run campaigns for something like 10 measures, I'm not keen on running a measure to fund EMS this year and then again in 2 years. That just,
Especially when we just did it.
yeah, I mean, I just ran the campaign in 2022, and facing, hopefully, with more help than I had in 2022, running a campaign in 2026, and then having to run the campaign in 2028. Like, I'm not excited about that at all. So, again, my preference is have the trigger, keep it the way it is, and then if the trigger activates, then it'll go to the new structure with the larger increase in revenue.
And that trigger could activate anytime?
Yeah, anytime, sure. I mean, unless the attorney says otherwise, but yeah.
Can I make a proposal? A motion? I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with option 3 as the approach, and the inclusion of the trigger language we can reconvene on. And does that have to be decided before? Does that have to be decided tonight? I'm just saying, like, we know, you all need to know what methodology to run with. So we could say tonight, move with option 3, and we are going to have another chance to do this. And like, if we find out that the money has been found, we can just strike the trigger provision and say, don't actually put that in the measure because the funding has already been agreed upon. It's happening.
Well, we're not going to know that because there's a $30 million funding cap between the state budget and what the Park District was putting in. There's another $30 million that has to be raised. So we're not going to know. I mean, obviously, if the 125 doesn't develop, then we'll know it's not happening. So there's that, but we can't necessarily wait for that. But we know, so we know it. We might know if it's not going to happen, but we're not going to know if it's going to happen.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm saying is we can move forward. It sounds like we are in agreement on option 3 for $2.5 million, and that we will get to see the ballot language once more, and that's an opportunity to have discussion about whether or not to include the trigger.
I mean,
Is that,
look to staff for.
is that correct or not?
We need to include the language in the ballot measure.
Well, no, I think what he's saying is.
But that will come to us once more. Is that correct? Before it goes to the ballot?
I think what he's saying is that the portion that is the Model 3 structuring, that could be written, and then whether or not the trigger language is included in the ballot measure could be decided at the next council meeting.
You'd basically be writing two
You
ballot
can
measures.
two measures. and
One
two
with the
documents.
trigger and one without,
Right.
which I guess is doable. It's a lot of extra work, and BBK is doing all of the
Okay.
work at a cost.
So I will remove that option. And I'll make a motion that we move with, sorry, it's not a motion, but a recommendation that we move with approach 3 with the trigger language.
And no change in current approach until then. No change
Correct,
in rate
correct.
until then. Okay.
It is, people are simply voting, should Golden Gate Field's revenue be lost? This gets triggered automatically.
Yes. Okay. I will second that. With the.
It wasn't a motion.
Oh, was it? I thought it was. Sorry.
It was just a
Okay.
recommendation. You look. I do look puzzled. That would
Do
be,
you look puzzled?
that would be a good word. No, it was just a recommendation, so we're still,
I wanted to understand what exactly was being offered up, and we need direction on whether or not there's a 50% low income in addition to the very low income. That's a relatively simple question relative to the other.
Also, maybe we can answer that question since it's simpler. Do we include when Model 3 goes into effect, do we include a 50% exemption rebate for households between very low and low income?
and is there a half in there somewhere, or is that just?
Well, I'm 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
50%.
Okay.
We have consensus on that.
I think we have, yeah, that's fine.
I would be supportive of that.
So we have consensus on that.
Okay, so now the clarity of what was it you proposed?
We're going with option 3 with the trigger language. So option 3 is the $2.5 million with a building square foot rate and a vacant property lot square footage rate. It's option 3.
So I'm not sure what the trigger,
Sorry, the trigger is the sale of Golden Gate Fields to a non-taxable, become a non-taxable.
there's no trigger, if there's no change in the rate that's going to be charged, if you're going to Model 3 now.
No, what we're saying is there's no change in anyone's tax
So
rate until Golden Gate Fields sells.
So the existing revenue at 2 million stays the existing revenue at 2 million.
Well, it would be at
Ish.
2.15.
Yes.
Okay, so it's, thank you.
May I? One just small thing. With the trigger, I would just maybe ask the council if they would consider if this is a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, what happens if we get to a certain time and now we're already receiving more than 2.5 million with the current methodology? Would we want to add like an escalator language to that rate structure that we're putting in the ballot measure, so we don't have the trigger and then we go backwards with our revenue? Just a thought there. Not to make it more complex, but that would be a worse.
You just did.
I'm sorry. You just paid me for that. I'm sorry.
I don't even understand the question.
So in a world where 4 years from now,
Right.
maybe our revenue that's coming in is more than $2.5 million, and then all of a sudden the trigger hits,
Right.
and we're reset to these numbers, and now we're actually, maybe we're
Going
2.75, right, miraculously, right? Now we're back to 2.5.
Right. So these rates should increment as well. Yeah. Okay.
So if we leave it the way it is, and we get the 2.15, right?
Yes,
Is that sufficient?
it will have to be. It doesn't meet the cost. It will put a burden on the general fund.
So we need to, in my view, then we need to do something different. Because we need to cover our costs here, whatever that is.
I mean, question, would we be here talking about this if it wasn't for Golden Gate Fields at this juncture?
What?
Potentially, yes, because of the possessory
Right.
interest.
Yeah.
And that was an effort that the council wanted to see on special taxes, especially this tax due to Belmont Village.
I mean, at the moment, we're talking about a gap of 150,000.
So-
And if we go over 4 measures, which we are going to go, I mean, it's another 80,000 just in election costs.
If we were to say the rate doesn't change until the trigger happens, we could, though, say that possessory interest would be taxed. So that would be an increase in revenue. Is that correct? I mean, I don't know how much.
Ooh, I like that.
But in other words, so it's saying no matter what, we're cleaning up to get taxes from those who we have not been able to get taxes from in the past. It's not changing anyone's rates, right? So we're just finding more money. And then when the trigger happens, that's because we're going to lose. That's when the trigger happens and the system changes.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Is that you're not going to tax the possessory interest.
Well, no, what he's.
No, what I'm saying is, so instead of saying nothing changes, we say the only change until the trigger is we're going to include possessory interest land.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which again, that
that'll raise-
may not be $150,000, but it's going to be something,
Yeah,
right, to help us.
Right. Yeah, I really like
And so again, it's Mala.
I just raised if that was easy to explain.
I mean, we don't.
I think in explaining it, I can simply, I could imagine being able to say we are simply making it so that we're actually getting taxes from those who because of the language in the past we haven't been able to collect. And in the situation that Golden Gate Fields is sold to a non-taxable entity, which is a possibility, that we are actually switching to a different tax rate system to be more fair and avoid the situation we ended up with Golden Gate Fields.
The city whole.
I would say it's simpler than changing the tax rate and then changing the tax rate again. But it's not as simple as saying nothing changes until Golden Gate Fields. I see your point, Mala. It's not as easy, but
I mean, it's becomes a selling point.
yeah.
Also, but I mean, we're still going to need the revenue. So, I mean, I'm still going back to the, you know, I don't think that nothing changes works because we're still going to need, because it's going to just keep increasing. So, you know, our costs and everything.
So are
We're
you?
going to need it anyway.
What are you proposing? Are you proposing that we not wait for the trigger and we just go straight to 2.5 million in collected revenue?
I kind of feel like we should. Like, nothing's getting cheaper.
Yeah.
And we've got, you know, we're already like cutting a percentage out of each of the departments. We're already asking staff to do way beyond, you know, what they were intended to do, and we're just going to have to keep either saying no to certain things, or we're going to have to bring in some more funding somehow.
But we're looking at bringing in more funding. We have two general fund revenue measures that we're looking at.
I know, but it just feels like, you know, and based upon what you were saying is, you know, one when I was talking about the condo people earlier about having to pay more, but if this one doesn't, you know, and going hand in hand, I mean, there's a lot around it, but I also feel like, you know, say we were to leave a trigger in there, right? When does that trigger expire? What if this thing doesn't get solved in 2 years? What if this thing doesn't get solved in 6 years? Much to what you brought up, maybe there should have been a sunset clause, like this would happen if a trigger happened, but then would sunset if it didn't happen by this time. Because then we would have to come back with another measure or something.
I think what she was bringing up was the rates and the structure that would be triggered should also be going up by inflation
I
over
understand
time.
that,
Okay,
but
so I mean, then it could be.
is that going to
that could be
happen when
forever.
it triggers, or is that?
So it would be going from the time the measure passes, those rates would be incrementing by inflation, so that when the trigger happens, they would be where they would be if it went into effect right away. So there'd be no loss in that sense.
Would it? I mean, I'm just like.
As long as it was in the ballot measure language, that the rates would be escalating from whatever fiscal year, you know.
From passage. Yeah.
So how do you know how much to escalate? Do you escalate by CPI?
You would indicate that in the measure, so keeping it, you know, with the April CPI would probably make sense.
Okay.
And with Councilmember Mickey's realization that we could correct the possessory interest problem now in the current tax structure, I mean, from when I've looked at this, it'd be like another $50,000. So now we're up to $200,000 more that we'd be getting versus what we get now.
Okay,
And
so let me just see, all right. So the two ballot measures that are kind of like hinging on each other, so the you know, for example, I'm just saying, the condo owner is going to be paying more because this one passed, and say this one passes too with the trigger clause, with the, can't use words out of my mouth right now. You know what I'm, basically, would that still be fair then? Or would it only be fair if the trigger happens?
I mean, it's fair if they both go into effect at the same time. If both
With or without
the
the
street
trigger?
storm drain, well, so either they both have to trigger or neither trigger,
Okay,
because they offset each other. So you can't have a trigger on one without the other, because then it gets really complicated. Because then like if you don't have a trigger on the, if you put this one into effect right away and you have a trigger on the streets and storm drains, then condo owners are going to be paying a lot more because they're not going to get the offset reduction. So they have to go together. Whatever the timing is, they have to go together in what I hold. They either both have to go into effect immediately or they both go into effect when they're triggered. And I just don't.
Did we talk about the prior one going into effect with a trigger? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I don't want to ask, I don't want to be in the position of asking residents to pay more now when Golden Fields hasn't actually gone untaxable. I just think that's not a great message to have to try to campaign on.
But we're changing the way that they're being taxed, too.
Right, but they would be paying more. I mean, yeah, we're changing the way they're being taxed, but what they care about is they're going to be paying more than they are now, because Golden Gate Fields will be paying less. So to change it now is to say, we want you to pay more taxes now, even though Golden Gate Fields hasn't gone untaxable. And I don't think that's a great campaign message, particularly if you need 2/3 of the people in support.
So does it work to just add the possessory tax now? Leave everything else the same as Councilmember Mickey said? Does that work?
I think it moves us part of the way there. Ultimately, there are so many moving pieces. I would say it doesn't raise as much revenue as we would by aiming for a higher revenue target. Does that make it more difficult to balance the budget because the general fund will balance whatever isn't covered through that EMS fund? Absolutely. Then it's just a puzzle exercise of getting all the pieces to fit. It's a slightly more difficult puzzle without the additional revenue. So there are trade-offs either way.
So if we're going to get 200,000 of 300,000, you look at the question is the extra 100,000 worth the risk of lowering the probability of passage, which, having campaigned for many, many measures, is my judgment. I don't know that, I don't have the data to say it'll make the difference.
Right.
But I don't think it's worth the risk, to use a phrase the mayor introduced me to, it's worth the squeeze. There we go. and I fall on the side of it's not worth the squeeze.
But if we're not coming up with the revenue we need, I mean, I think that's what I keep going back to, is we need just a certain amount of revenue. How are we going to get there? And if we're not maybe picking option 3, we're not getting to where we need to be. Is that right?
You're getting part of the way there through other means, and there are other measures that are looking at general tax dollars, but all that will ultimately, again, have to come to play in the budget as a whole. So it's really hard to pick out this one piece. I can say that the costs for provision of EMS services are growing faster than our revenues have been growing, and that's a consistent problem. So do I think it's a problem if we don't get the additional running room, as was described in this measure? Yeah, I think it's a challenge. It's not an impossible challenge, but it is a challenge among all the other challenges of trying to balance all these measures.
But, I mean, we just talked about the business tax, and that, if it passes, is $500,000 to $600,000 in new revenue.
And the property transfer tax, if I recall, we haven't decided, but seems to be headed to $800,000. Now, we also have increasing unfunded.
I mean, if it truly ends up, business tax ends up being at 600, that's $100,000 more than we had asked. I mean, we had been targeting $500,000. We don't know, it'll be somewhere in that range. I feel like that is helping us stabilize our overall budget. And yes, in particular, EMS will be low. But I'm not going to bet on it, but 2028, 2029, like, the trigger will have been implemented if this tax measure passes. So what we're really asking is over the next 3 years, with the business tax change, if it passes, and the other tax passes, can we cover ourselves for the next 3 years?
I think yes. And those are 50% threshold to pass. So I think putting this one at risk for a few $100,000, because I agree, the probability I would agree is high that this trigger happens. It's not as close to 100% as I would like to have no trigger.
Yeah.
But I think it is high, so it's really worth $200,000 to risk the passage of this measure. And I think no. $200,000 being $100,000 over the next 2 years.
Okay.
Do we have a consensus or a recommendation?
We're getting there.
Okay, I'm just, I'm still going back to kind of thinking that, the message to the potential voters were, hey, listen, we're already, yes, we're asking for these increases. And I don't like to increase stuff, obviously, but we're already struggling balancing our budget and having the revenues that we need to meet the growing costs and needs of the city, even without losing Golden Gate Fields. So should we also lose Golden Gate Fields, we're going to be that much more exponentially in the hole. So I think kind of my message to the voters would be like, hey, we're already having trouble covering our costs, plus what we estimate the continuing cost to be. So therefore, we have to do this. God, and then once we get to this point of losing that taxable revenue, this is at least going to keep us stable. That's the kind of message I'm thinking of.
Well, but I would put that message on the business license tax restructuring and the property transfer tax restructuring, and not put it on this measure specifically. Say, we're raising more funds through these other measures to keep the city whole, and this measure has a trigger in it to keep the city whole if Golden Gate Fields goes untaxable.
Yeah. So, never mind. That's way too far in the weeds. Okay, so it sounds like at least 3 of us can grudgingly get to the possessory tax being implemented now, keeping things the same, and having a trigger. Is that what you're saying? And you can live
With an indexed
with a CPI.
dollars so that we don't end up going backwards on the rates when the new rates kick in.
Yes.
And very low income plus at 100% exemption rebate plus 50% low income.
But that only goes into effect with the trigger.
But that only goes into effect with the trigger.
So if it goes into effect before that, then we're losing money.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so can we all live with that?
I mean, if you guys are fine, I'll go, yeah.
I mean, yeah. Okay, so you have what you need? Okay, great, thank you.
Rubik's Cube.
All right, let's see what other trouble we can get into.
And Berkeley doesn't have this problem because Golden Gate Fields is tiny, tiny part as opposed to our situation.
And they're in so much trouble there.
Yeah.
So at least they're problem.
Yeah. I think the other thing when we just talk about messaging is just that we are fortunate to be a city right now, which is finding a way to have balanced budget. We are by far the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly my point.
Thank you.
Is that,
Okay, where are we here? Am I in charge?
We're shifting away from the dollar sign.
Oh, thank goodness. All right.
More items on dollars.
No wonder my eyes are spinning. All right, that brings us to new business. 11.1, policy on disruption of telephonic or internet service during city council meetings. May we have a staff report?
Good evening, council. The item before you tonight is to adopt a policy on the disruption of telephonic or internet service during city council meeting to be effective July 1st, 2026. Senate Bill 707, which was signed into law last October, includes significant changes to the Brown Act and public meetings. One of the requirements is to allow members of the public to participate legislative body meetings through a two-way phone or audio-visual platform, which Albany has been offering that for our community members since the pandemic. And the other additional requirement is that legislative body shall adopt a policy addressing how the agency will respond in case of technical issue on that causes a service disruption to remote access of the public meeting. So we've included the proposed policy prepared by our city attorney that includes the procedure, and it's for your consideration tonight to adopt. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Anything? Is there any public comment? Anything online? All right. Come back to council comments. I'll accept a motion to adopt resolution 2026-46.
I'll move that we adopt that measure. There. I will not repeat that number.
May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mickey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanser Romero. Yes. Mayor McQuaid,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
and Councilmember Lopez is absent, and the motion carries.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to council subcommittee reports, council member reports on appointed representation of Albany and other meetings and events. We'll start with you, Councilmember Mickey.
I have no meetings to report.
Vice Mayor?
I attended the stopwaste.org meeting, and again, just want to keep re-emphasizing all the new programs and, grants and all of the fine work that they're doing there. And I'd encourage people to go on to the stopwaste.org agency board and take a look at the programming that is available to the communities and the schools.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Jordan?
Yeah, I went to the Mosquito Bay District board meeting. Board received the evaluation of the executive director from the evaluation committee and approved a 4% compensation increase based on his excellent performance in most areas, and also provide guidance for improvement in very few areas. I went to the EPLC, sorry, I can't remember that at this point, my brain's too fried, meeting of the Alameda County Transportation Commission today, and it approved a program for regional transit measure. Should it pass, there's about $10 million of pass through to Alameda County Transportation Commission, and it approved a program to emphasize over the next 3 years supporting transit operations with that money based on grant applications.
Great, thank you. And I attended a League of California Cities webinar on legislation. We also had a community services policy committee meeting. I was at the City Safety Expo, which they did a great job as always. We had a housing authority meeting, and I was elected vice chair. We had the mayor's conference in Piedmont by the pool last week, and saw a lot of former Albany staff that were there. It was great to catch up. And I watched most of the budget webinar by Supervisor Fortunato Bass. So future agenda items, anything anybody has? Great. Any public? Okay, announcements of upcoming meetings and events. Let me remind you, Friday, Juneteenth is a city holiday. City facilities will be closed. Next council meeting is July 6th. Don't forget 4th of July. And all the other announced meetings are on the website. And with that, we will adjourn at 9:38.